will begin the Town of Selectmen, Board of Selectmen meeting. It is Wednesday, March 20th, and it's 5:03. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On to item 2, approval of the minutes, March 6, 2019.
Make a motion to approve March 6, 2019 minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? None? We vote? All in favor? Item 3, review of treasurer's warrants, payroll 15, 16, accounts payable 17.
Make a motion to approve A and B as read.
Second.
Any further discussion? None? We vote, unanimous. Open session. Would anybody visiting today like to speak? Nope.
Two of them are already on.
Two of them are on the agenda, so. Item 5, Selectmen's concerns. We had some back and forth on a couple of road issues. Looks like they were all taken care of.
Yes.
The drainage thing, they got right on
Very
it.
good.
That was really good.
Yeah, on the,
On
the
my road?
water, yeah.
Yep.
And East Sangerville too,
I
I
don't know
think.
if you were part of that crew or not, but
Chip.
yeah, all you need is a small hole. It works.
Got to be the big one.
Yep, no, that was perfect. I really appreciate it.
Culvert on my road's filled.
Good.
One more to do down by Bob Brown's, that one's a big drop, so we'll do that one too.
They're all moving now, aren't they? I think we got like an inch of rain coming on Friday,
Oh.
so that was
Yeah.
good. So,
Really?
yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
last I heard it was snow, sleet, freezing rain, and a mess.
I think it's mostly
I think
rain.
it's mostly rain
I don't know, it's
and
good.
above average flood warning.
Ugh. Not good.
On to item 6, committee reports.
I don't
None?
have anything now.
New business, item 7, new business, Ryan Clark. Must be
Yeah.
Ryan.
So I have an application with the USDA to put in an irrigation pipeline, which would require crossing the Flanders Hill Road, and I know I spoke with you about that. So basically, assuming that the town would be okay with me excavating or boring across the road, I need something in writing from the town to give to the USDA so that the plan can go through and be approved. So I'm not really sure what the process for that is or what you guys need.
Does that have to go through? I mean, planning board, do we have anything?
Well, I don't think
I
we-
think
We
he's,
didn't need.
Oh, no,
don't think
I'm
they-
questioning, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to
Jerry?
Jerry, yeah, and he said I did not need to go through the planning board, so.
And the road is paved there, correct?
It isn't actually.
Oh, it isn't where you
Which
live.
is a nice feature.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Yeah.
I don't know about
I'm not really
that.
sure why it's not, but there's a short section that's not.
So
And-
that's where you are.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the way this worked is that I put in an application, they had an engineer come out, they came up with a plan, sort of. But I don't actually have that plan in writing, and some of it is flexible, like depending on where we cross the road. They had it in their plan, because this is a grant, so they're funding at least some of the project. And they had it in their plan that they would fund boring across the road, and I brought up that it's a gravel road, and I don't think that's necessary. I have been speaking with, but it's the government, so they have money to throw at something. So I have been speaking with Chummy Jackson about what he thinks of this, and he thinks excavation's the way to go. So I guess that's where I'm at. I don't know if this requires a permit or if I could just get a letter, something in writing.
I think, one of the things, because he and I spoke about this, and I don't, and you were on the planning board longer than I was, but I think he's right. I think what Jerry said is, I don't think they have any
No.
jurisdiction or
Yeah.
anything that way.
Nope. Nope.
So really, our role would be, and I was kind of noodling, obviously, we're responsible for that road. So do we hire the contractor, make sure that it's done the way that we would like it done, and then expect that he's gonna pay the bill? Or do we let him basically hire his own contractor and we inspect it afterwards? Those are kind of the variables that I was thinking. There may be more moving parts than that, but that was, to me, that's kind of our concern in all this.
Right.
My other part about the planning board wasn't so much the planning board involvement, but Jerry, if we've ever done this in the past in any other, he may have might have been a part of it or remembered it, but.
Well, it doesn't sound
I
like he
was
felt
wondering
like
if
they
that-
needed to be
somebody else
involved.
might have been a part of it in the past, but.
Is this gonna be a permanent line or a temporary line?
It's gonna be permanent.
Okay,
Well,
permanent.
semi-permanent. I think the life of the plan is 20 years.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that line is something that will be, you know, is there a culvert there handy, you can sneak your pipe?
There isn't, I mean, there is one, it's kind of on the wrong side of my driveway, and then I'd have to cross, I'd have to go alongside somebody else's field to get it to where I need it.
Does Toby have one right up in the corner before you get to the farm, does he have one that goes under the road?
No idea.
He does, yeah. And it would be, if I use the existing culvert, that's on the east side of my driveway, but then I'd have to cross over Cleaves's access
Yeah.
into their field there, which he might not care if I buried it under his road access. But then, yeah, the trouble is it puts my main irrigation line on the wrong side of my driveway.
Yeah, that's,
Because I had thought about that, and I was talking to Chummy about whether or not to put in like a culvert or a sleeve so that if we needed to,
protect your pipe.
to protect the pipe, and then the last time I spoke with him, he didn't think that we'd be able to do that, and it had something to do with the slope of the bank where it would cross, and I don't know exactly why. But I mean, I imagine this must have come up with before.
Not for us, it has
Not for us, this
And
board.
not with the planning board ever, we've
Well,
never
that's why I
Right,
was
you've been
discussed,
on the planning board forever.
we never discussed anything like that. Now, is it an irrigation line for you to get,
It's
Water?
pumping water from our pond to a field that I lease across on the other side of Flaming's Hill Road.
okay.
So you don't actually own both sides of the road?
No.
You don't actually own either side of the road, because you're leasing?
No, I own the side of the road that the pipeline is originating on.
Okay.
Down to Mar Pond?
Yeah, I own on the south side of the road. I
Okay.
own that parcel, down to the pond. But I don't own, I do have written consent from Tom Kemp, who's the landowner on the north side of the road. And that's on file with the USDA.
And what material are you going to
It's
use?
a 2-inch plastic line. It's
Okay,
not
so it's a
very large.
continuous, it's a water line?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the.
That's where the
big, huge
culvert
black
interests me.
rolls.
Because if you ever break it,
Right,
you're back to excavating again, whereas if you had a culvert, you could just,
right.
Well, you can, whip it through in the summertime, and
Right.
in the winter, when you get all your waters, and you can.
Well, that's the thing, is if we go through a culvert, I'd have to remove it in the winter, which my plan is to just drain the line
The whole thing.
in the fall and, take out the temporary lines, but the main irrigation line will stay.
So you're not going to bury it below the frost line?
No, it'll get drained.
It'll get
over the
drained.
winter. Yeah, no, that was one thing they looked into, but it would have been,
A big
too
dump,
much.
yeah. So it's more not surface, but, so how deep do you plan on putting it down?
Well,
For
no, it is
example,
gonna
across
be,
the road.
most of it's gonna be above ground, the only place
Oh,
it's
above
gonna
ground.
go, yeah.
Is on the
Ah, I
road.
see,
The only place it's
ah.
gonna go is if it's gonna cross a road, or, there might be a couple other places that will bury it.
Oh,
that's why boring was a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and that seems overkill to me, but I don't
Well, I don't
Honestly,
know,
my
it might
bigger
be less
concern
than
is-
excavating the road.
Huh?
That you're gonna bore a 4-inch hole underneath the road bed
Yeah.
versus digging up the entire road bed.
Right.
I don't know if somebody has the technology to do that.
Yeah, wouldn't
With
it
the
collapse? I mean, you'd have to
No,
bore
not
it pretty deep,
necessarily.
no?
Well, they get some
Yeah.
pretty neat equipment.
I mean, I
Really?
guess that would be something that I would like to figure out is if the town has a preference of boring, because the USDA is gonna fund, they're willing to put more money towards boring than they are towards excavation.
Sucks, right?
Well, I mean, my concerns honestly is future state, it's not the conversation of this today or whatever, but, so if you put this pipeline in there and it's not below frost ground, we all know what happens with a rock, it always comes to the top.
Right.
So eventually that is gonna come to the top. So if this went across, does that mean it's ours? And what about ditching
Well, it
and
would-
and
we-
typical other road maintenance when there's road issues, that's,
What's frost line on a road, 4 feet or?
I don't
Depends
know
on the
what
type
the-
of traffic
we
and
would have to.
all that.
Because I mean, I imagine that
County
would
road
be,
guy.
where it crosses the road, I imagine we put
County?
it below
He was the
that.
guy that we used before,
Phil?
yes.
But Dale's making a really good point about ongoing, you know, once that's in there, we wouldn't want the town to be responsible if we had to do something on that road and we ended up damaging that pipe, we wouldn't wanna own that project. That just, you know, if they have to ditch it, they have to ditch it.
I mean, like for your driveway, if you put in a new driveway,
Right.
you would be responsible to put the first culvert in. And going forward after that, the town takes care of that. So, that's kind of the same mentality that, and I have no idea if it applies or any, this just
Yeah.
questions.
Well, what
We
about,
need to iron out.
what underground electrical lines, has that ever come up?
Those all involve dig safes, right? You can't even dig there without somebody
Just
signing
trying to
off and
think of
saying.
anything that might be relevant.
Well, and I wonder if we ought to talk to Cleves, I mean, maybe they had some of this that we don't know about, and what was the process when they did it.
Yeah, I don't even know if it goes underground there, I don't know.
think
I mean, really, I like
it
the
does.
culvert
I mean,
idea
they
better
have
than
a
they do anything,
hydrant
but
on
that's-
the
Right, right.
north
Keep it
side
out of the
road.
ground, and then you
Yeah,
know
if you're
where it
gonna
is.
drain it, you can always, then you can
Yeah.
pull it out every winter.
But
At
if
least
the,
that piece.
if the engineers don't have your plan yet, is this an equip project?
Is it, yeah, I think it is, yeah.
Well, but, you know, if the board is concerned about future pipe, wherever, if they can design that so you can disconnect and then move that above ground pipe out of the way or whatever.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be an issue, but
Yeah,
they like engineering challenges, so, you know.
yeah, exactly.
Well, in some of these questions, you may be able to go back and ask them, because
Yeah, they
I'm
may
sure they are
have
dealing
a-
with other towns.
Well, the trouble is, well, no, I mean, the thing is that I'm dealing with you know, whatever, the field agent, through NRCS, and then he's dealing with the engineer, and the field agent basically told me they have no idea what the process is for crossing the road, so I need to figure it out with the town and get back to them. But the USDA, in order for this to go through, the USDA needs something from the town saying that it's okay.
Okay, I can see that.
So they have given me absolutely no direction whatsoever with this. And I apologize for bringing this to you.
Well, no, and you wanna get, I'm sure you wanna get in there first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
well, and the deadline, so the first step of this is I've been pre-approved for the grant, but then the final approval, we have until, I believe it's April, I wanna say it's April 20th that we have to figure it out by.
But there's gotta be a culvert there somewhere down, closer
Well,
towards
that's
camps,
Well, the one closer towards Kemp's is way down by the turn in the road.
oh, it's down that far, but there's
Yeah,
nothing between
yeah,
your driveway and
well,
there?
there might be, but it's kind of far down there. I'd have to go through the woods to get to it, and
What about coming up the ditch?
coming up the ditch where?
Could you go out through the culvert up the ditch to your house? or
Well, I mean,
through
you
the
know,
field?
maybe.
May I please see the?
Yeah, so these are the maps of where they're talking about. That blue line is the 2-inch line.
Proposed, or is that what exists now?
No, that's proposed.
And
this
is
has-
this your land right here?
Yes, this parcel is mine.
Okay, and there's Mar Pond. And then you wanna irrigate this field?
Yeah, well, this entire section is gonna be irrigated along with across the road.
I see.
And so this is where they currently have us crossing is, right, so this is my driveway, so it comes up on the west side of the driveway and goes along the hedgerow there, and then crosses at the corner of Kemp's driveway. You know, and where we cross is kind of flexible, but if we use the culvert over here, then this line's on the wrong side of the driveway unless I bury it the whole way there. And then the only other culvert that he's talking about, there might be one somewhere in here, but then we're way out of the way there.
And you're irrigating this field and
No,
this
not this
whole-
way, this is
Oh.
Cleves.
Oh, okay.
Just this 4-acre.
And you don't know whether Cleves irrigates this field, or do you know?
They do, I believe they have a hydrant down in here. Cause I mean, one thing I had thought about was using this culvert and then asking Toby if I could bury it under his driveway here, but then that just, it's kinda, then I'd have to bury lines under my driveway to get water over into these fields.
And when they use that hydrant, they hook onto it and then put the sprinkler system or whatever?
Yeah, they have like a big water
Right,
wheel
right.
that they use.
So there's no possibility of using Cleves hydrant and?
Well, then I'd be I don't know what they use for a pump, I mean, then I'd be, using their infrastructure and
No,
hesitate to-
that's not something.
no.
Okay,
It's not that'd be nice, but
okay.
Right, yeah, that's,
I'd like to go over by there, I mean, I know about where everything is, but.
yeah,
Problem is, by April, you still might not be able to see culverts.
no.
The rates the snow's going.
I don't think an inch of rain.
And April 20th is your
We get a
deadline?
lot of rain.
I believe so, I can check on that.
I think I would want advisement from somebody else on the whole thing, as far as, locking the town into doing something like this, cause I have no idea. I mean,
So you want me to contact Phil Curtis?
I think he's basically our only reference, wouldn't he?
He certainly, although we haven't run into this as the three of us, the town may have, but I'm sure Phil has.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, one side of me would really like the idea to be able to grant permission to let you lay a line down the ditch on top and through a culvert and down the other side. And then, you would
Well, if
hold
it's in the
the,
ditch, then I'd have to take the entire section that's in the ditch, I'd have to take
Correct.
that out. Which, I mean, I think the plan calls for this being at least
Semi-permanent.
that blue line being
semi-permanent.
semi-permanent.
And did the field agent do this or that engineer do this?
These were the engineer, I believe. yeah.
And where's that engineer located?
I have no idea. I mean, that's,
Usually Orno.
Oh. Okay.
yeah, I haven't communicated directly with him except for one field visit.
In projects, the engineers are very flexible. If you could come up with a plan, you could come up with a plan that would satisfy both, the engineer would approve that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a concerned pipe or whatnot, if they could figure out a way to break, if it's the pipe is an issue and they could figure out how to get the pipe out of the way when it does come time for work, then
So what would the town's biggest concerns be? Is it,
That's what I'd like to give him, is, what is it that we're looking for? What do we want answers to?
right, yeah, I
I
mean,
think-
you brought up the issue of who owns it once it's in the road.
Right.
And
What
Who's
happens in future
responsible
state?
for it? Right.
If, let's just say, when we have to ditch that,
Right.
who's gonna be responsible?
So
Your
is
line's
that-
gonna be there, if we go up through there and ditch, it's, I mean, we have to call dig safe and everything else now.
So could that be just as simple as a contract between
Could be.
us and the town, where we take on responsibility of maintaining the pipeline? We own the pipeline, so it's our responsibility.
I'm really hoping that Phil has run into this somewhere else and can help and,
So who is Phil?
He works for Maine Local Roads Center, he's worked with the state, and the county, I think it's an Upper County, for 40 years. He's got a lot of experience on road building and maintenance and stuff like that.
His job is to work with municipalities.
Yeah.
For stuff like this.
He's what they call, the state calls him a road ranger, he's there
Okay.
to give guidance to municipalities.
Yeah, and he would be one that would come out and look at it,
Yeah.
we could,
And he's pretty, even none of that, if Lois calls him, he'll
Yeah,
right
it's right
away
on
say, here's how I've done this in the past, or I've never done this.
Yeah.
So that seems like a good first step.
I think so too.
And
Yeah.
then figuring out, so if the town is okay with it, then figuring out if we should go ahead with the USDA wanting me to bore across the road, or excavation. And if the town has a preference for that, kinda need to know that.
personally,
He may be
I
familiar with
would, that would be all under Phil. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't see, for me, if we're gonna approve it, I don't think it would make a difference either way. I mean, the bigger question would be back to what you said. It would probably would be somebody that the town may wanna hire so that we know that the road is,
Chummy's worked for us in the past, you already talked to him, I'm sure that
Right.
that would work. I
Right.
suspect that would be just fine.
And I think he said that he has done boring before, but I don't know if he rents a I don't think he does.
So if they bored it, would it be a permanent casing and then your pipe would pass through it, or how do you?
That I don't know, cause I've never done anything like that.
could you find out more information about that kind of stuff on your end? And,
I can try.
I mean, I know,
If Chummy's done it, he'd be a good resource.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, and I mean, if Chummy
And Phil may know.
has gone across a road with any, I mean,
Sure.
Chummy may have done this for the town.
well, the Cleves may be doing this already and we don't know it. I
Right.
mean, this may be something that's come up in the past and it's,
Right,
maybe we're all thinking more into it than we need to, I don't know. I
No,
just,
and I'm sure there are
Yeah.
resources in Corinna and Exeter, there's a lot of water lines being moved around down
Yeah.
there, so.
But his project would, that would be an expense for the project, and they would reimburse, that would be they'd reimburse the town, I mean.
right,
Yeah.
Right.
right. So, and Gilrock Farm never came,
I
went
had a
across.
garden hose for water tubs before, but that's no irrigation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think
That's
so
what, go ahead.
You plan on sleeving the pipe that goes through?
According to the engineer, no. Chummy had suggested that, but then he went and looked at it, and for some reason, where the way that the slope of the bank
grade
is,
is,
he said he couldn't do that.
So my concern would be if your pipe breaks and causes damage to the road, then who's liable? That's where I was,
I mean, my thought process is, I don't want it to be us.
Right.
That's the same thing I'm thinking,
Right.
that whatever happens down the road, if that pipe needs to be, anything happens, you would be, it would
Yeah, I
be
mean,
you.
I think it would make sense to sleeve it so we could take it out easy.
I mean, you'd have to have junctions on either side because that black pipe is not something you can go
Yeah.
and pull it.
No.
It is rigid.
Yeah. So, so if you call this Phil person, what would be the,
Phil's very responsive
Yeah.
normally. So I bet Lois has some information for us in a week.
okay. So would that be the way to?
I think that's a good next step.
Okay.
He'll probably eliminate some of these options or tell us
And
what's
within that time, we
optimal.
get an answer maybe from Cleves, if they've done this, or we've done this in the past.
Right.
Cause I can't think of anybody, if you haven't done it, he would be the only other one in the
I don't
town
think
that,
Stutzman's don't come across the road anyway.
No, I don't believe so.
They They have nothing on that side, so.
So he would be the only other one if we've ever done it.
See, they have, you know, the big aluminum pipes, and he's just talking 2-inch and,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, I mean, I know they have lines crossing that road, but I have no idea when they were put in. And that section's paved. Well, it hasn't been for that long, but
Is
And they-
this
oh, go
for
ahead.
subsistence farming?
for what?
Subsistence farming, is that what it's gonna be for?
It's for commercial farming.
Commercial farming? For vegetables and
Yeah,
produce?
yeah, it's mixed, yeah, we have a mixed vegetable operation.
you do CSA and,
Yeah, farmers markets
Yeah.
and CSA.
And Cleves use Mar Pond for all of their irrigation, even down?
I don't know about all, but
Oh.
for everything that's right around there, yeah, like this field right here. I mean, all of their fields that are
Close.
in close proximity,
They
which
use Mark.
which they definitely have to cross the road.
and I think Cleves have done irrigation up to the Abbott site too that they do. I think they have irrigation up there now.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't know if they had a crossroads at any point, but that would be the newest one,
Where?
Abbott.
Who?
yeah, I had thought about calling Toby, but I hadn't.
But I don't know if it crosses road, I don't know.
Yeah, he could answer that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a
So
good phone call.
should I call him or should one
No,
of you?
Lois can.
I can-
Lois can call him?
Sure.
You're gonna call Toby? Oh, as well, okay.
And, yeah, I guess we'll go from there. Do you think that if we get some answers from them, that I'll have to come to the next select board meeting?
I think we'll know by then whether there's a reason for you to come to the next meeting, which is the first Wednesday in April.
First?
April 3rd.
Do you have contact for him?
I think I have his phone number.
So I mean, as long as,
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Rick, we went by open session before you folks got here. Did you want to say anything today?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Thanks.
On to item B, Dr. Kent.
I just wanted to bring everybody, with everything that's been on in the papers and everything, so I wanted to bring everyone up to speed on where we are, what's going on. But I did have one question first that concerned me. The town sent a letter directly to the CEO of the hospital, Marie Bino, in a FOIA request for her employment contract and all addendums. And my concern was what this had to do with the town, our town, her personal contract. This is a question that,
I asked Lois to make that request,
okay.
and I had two different sources, but one was a resident. It was kind of an odd rumor, and that's what I'll characterize it as, a rumor. He has a physician in the Waterville area that seems to be very engaged in this whole process.
Which process, sorry, Mike?
The HAD merger with Northern Lights.
Waterville?
Yep. And I guess he has some affiliation or relationships with some of the members of Reddington Fairview. In fact, he specifically mentioned their CEO.
He may be a board member at Northern Light too.
I don't know that.
Okay.
But anyway, the nature of the rumor, and that's really all it was that the Marie, she's the chief executive officer,
CEO,
right?
president, right.
Had received an enhancement in her severance package that coincided with this negotiation. Essentially, what he was being told was that her parachute was doubled. And I just found that to be shocking. So I assumed that it's probably not true, but that was the reason for the request, was to get to the bottom of that rumor, which surprises me that these rumors are now Well, we're all the way down to Skowhegan and Waterville, and people are talking about things like that. So that was the genesis of it. And then you probably know, that request was refused.
Right.
I'm not sure that that's justified on the part of the hospital, because I believe her contract was voted on by the board. And any addendums would have to be approved by the board. So much like Lois's contract, hers is a public document. But I haven't discussed with the board, any idea of pursuing this. It really was just to kind of quash this, what I thought was kind of an amazing rumor.
I appreciate that, because I think you're absolutely correct in the idea of rumors and this and that, and I mean, it's absolutely gotten out of control. People have lost sight, okay, of what this is all about. That's the loss of potential health care to the system. There are other variables, I certainly understand that. I can look into those. I would appreciate, as your representative, I work very hard on this thing. I have one bias, to make sure we have quality care forever, hopefully. That's my only bias. I don't get paid, I mean, so that's the only bias I have. But I think as your representative, if someone had come to me and said this, instead of starting with the FOIA, then the lawyers are involved and the rumors and this and that and the next thing.
Was there an addendum in the last 12 months?
Huh? Was it what?
Was there an addendum to her contract in the last 12
I
months?
have to look into that. I mean, there are so many things that are going on. I've been to so many meetings, and I
If
can't-
you could check,
and
that
I
would be
can-
great.
Of course I can. But what I'm saying is if we took one step back, had someone come to me, okay, instead of the FOIAs and the lawyers, and then the hospital's attorney having to write back, deny it under section such and such and such and such, and then the town has to think, are we gonna go back? That would mean a lawsuit again from the town to have to get,
I don't
this thing
see us
overturned.
pursuing
Right,
that.
you're too smart for that, I understand that, but I'm just saying, it's the process, we need to move forward one way or the other with this merger, that's all I'm saying.
Right, but your question to me, to the board tonight, at least starting out, was regard to this Freedom of Information Act. That's why that came about. Can you say that whether that's happened, or would you even say that should have happened?
I will look into that, is what I'm saying is, the second part of what I'm saying is why not go through the representative instead of having to go through a FOIA? Why couldn't you do that?
Let's do that from now on. And it would be great if you could let us know if that happened.
And you know what? Any questions, I've been here before, and dealing in a merger situation when you're talking to a multi-$100 million plus corporation, and they have been really terrific, I'll tell you, to deal with Northern Light. But, I mean, these contracts, you see the size of these contracts.
Well, this would have nothing to do with Northern Lights.
But, well, to some extent it does. If in fact this goes over, is it going to carry over? I mean, I don't know. That's what I will investigate and look into that for you. I don't know. I appreciate that, and that's important. So, I guess the first question, or the first thing that I would pose, do you, or does anybody have any question about the merger itself? And understanding, number one, that this is kind of the next process. Where we are now, as you're probably aware, is really at the legislative level. And they have had a number of meetings now of how they're going to get this merger together. I have taken always what you, Dale, Jody, you have been involved in terms of your concerns, which I think are very legitimate concerns. For instance, the idea of the guarantee. I can't remember what, I think it was yours, Mike. How do we know they're going to keep it open? We didn't. Okay, that was never in the contract. They have come around, and in fact, that does appear in the contract. The other question, which I think Dale had, was with the EMS service. I think we have answered that question to the best of the ability, and that is in fact going to happen. Are there any other questions that anyone has in that I either can answer or go back and find out for us as a town what may be necessary?
Yeah, from October, when you guys first came, I always felt like there were two very distinct paths here. You could, debating the merits of this merger seems like it's way outside of certainly my lane. I'm not an expert on hospitals, but the other avenue, which seems to be, at least when I read the paper and I talk to folks, what seems to be tripping you guys up is the charter. And whether the charter should be honored, and whether and the way the board interprets the charter versus the way it seems like virtually all of our local legislators interpret the charter, including even the Attorney General. So,
Well, the Attorney General made no comment. The
Well, he
Attorney
couldn't
General,
rule.
Actually, he didn't rule on anything. In fact, he bowed out of it and said that's not really within my jurisdiction. But if I can, and I think you make a very important point. And again, this is how not only I saw it at first, but having spoken to a number of other people in terms of legal counsel. Let's just understand, the contract was written in 73, the charter was written in 73. In all reality, it does not fit 2019. There's no provision for merger in there, number one. And number two, I don't know, you don't know, and nobody knows what the original intent was. So I think we're guessing at what it is. I think the plan of the hospital from legal counsel at the time, as I remember, okay, and I think this is true, was to follow the HAD1 transformation, whatever you want to call it. The original charter, okay, stated in terms of town approval, and again, I had spoken to you and Lois about a straw poll amongst our citizens, just us, not involving anybody, to see if I could get a feel for a merger situation. Now, things were going in a different direction. I never had time to finish that. The meeting we had early, that doesn't mean it's over for me personally. But that charter basically said that if the hospital was dissolved, okay, the hospital itself, and was sold, that in fact before that could happen, the towns had to weigh in. They were entitled to a division of the assets. I think Sangerville was about 6.2%, whatever it was, but it did. That absolutely required a town vote. The question of transformation of the charter appeared to be up to the Board of Governors. In the long run, though, it almost becomes academic. They went back then and looked at the HAD charter, number 1, from Lincoln, okay? And that was was precedent, and legal precedent, and was to be part of this template for how we were going to change the legislation, or whatever word you want to use semantically. It clearly stated in the HAD one, and I have it here if you're interested, that in fact, and I can read that to you because I think it's important that people understand it. And again, I didn't write it. Let me see what I did there. I'll just read this as part of it. The transfer may occur only if the directors of the district approve the transfer, and if all the independentness of the indebted district is paid, or adequate provision for the payment of that indebtedness of the district by the transferee corporation, by defeasance of any outstanding bonds of the district, or likewise, notwithstanding any provision of private and special law, 1967, chapter 58, nor the vote of the district or any town that is a member of the district or the inhabitants of either is required to authorize the transactions contemplated by this section. So that was supposedly to be the template. So, and again, at this juncture for me, all the semantics in this is out of the question. I think what has to be done, and I think the legislators, although I would hope they would move a little more quickly, we need to try to get a consensus of everybody. What works best, this is my opinion, okay, for all the towns. I think that's the key. I think Northern Light has come around on a number of different things, as you've seen within the merger agreement. But again, past that merger agreement, that's not a final contract by any means. I think you were at the meeting. It's not a final contract.
Actually, Jim said it was unless they amended it. You asked Jim
Well,
specifically, and
I
Jim
mean,
said,
there's still negotiations going on at this moment. okay?
but he said unless Northern Lights alters that contract,
Right.
that indeed that was the final
But
contract.
it would have to still be signed off by the board of directors of the hospital. It requires a second vote of the board of directors, that's number one. Two, you've got to get a CON from the state,
Why wouldn't
okay? And again, it's the legislative law, what these legislators are going to come up with. And again, to me, the right answer is how do we get to a position, which we still haven't resolved, of making everybody as happy as we possibly can. I'm going to tell you, I'm looking at the financials. We are already 4 months in to this year at 1.6 million in a hole. And we are now about to get another FIP, financial improvement plan in place to try to look and see where we're spending and what we need to do to try to improve that. But again, you know, if we go far enough down the road, and I believe get far enough in debt, I think there will be a concern by Northern Light, and I think we will lose this merger. And again, there's nothing else out there. And if we lose it, once this thing goes down, besides the economy and everything else, we're not going to be able to deliver quality health care to this issue. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. So, you know, that's basically where we are in the process right now. I think it's up right now to the legislators, and then we'll see where we're gonna go.
So what two paths, if the legislators do what you'd like, there it won't involve.
Not what I'd like.
Well, the outcome that you're desiring is not one that would involve a vote of each community, is that fair to say?
No, I think through the informational forums that are coming up now, okay, with Northern Light and with Mayo, I think there will be more input from the towns, and I think there will be any questions answered that need to be answered, because I think the confidentiality issue will go out of that, which I think has been a real problem, okay? I understand both sides, but
Still no plan for a vote.
no.
But originally, I've spoken to legislators.
I know
They
you have.
shared the discussion, the request, and I'm paraphrasing, but the request on the part of the board was to essentially provide for legislation that would allow for this transfer without a vote of the communities.
Well, I was at one meeting, and I don't believe that was stated that way.
And that's
Because
what
I
it
think
reads in
what
the
came
paper.
up- I think what came up by one or two of the legislators, that they were going to go through the Attorney General to get an opinion and find out where we were there, okay? That opinion turned out, my understanding is, there was no opinion and nothing was said. We're back to square one now, is what, and again, I don't know what the answer to that is, what the legislators are going to have to write, whether they're going to follow this template, which is the precedent of law on the books, or figure out something else. I don't know. I think it would be very nice if somehow, and I will tell you how Lincoln did this. They went ahead and they initiated actually a survey through all of their
It was
towns.
a phone survey, that was in the paper too.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it was in, I didn't read that, but they did, and I think they had a good majority of the vote. Is that the answer for our towns? I don't know, but I think that's a start in a reasonable direction, okay? So I'm certainly not opposed to that by any means. Again, I think it's going to come down to what the final negotiations are between Northern Light and the hospital and the legislators. And that's where we are.
That, I totally get that. It's just, from the, really, since after October, the board has been on the record. I went to the Dexter meeting, I've been to the Cambridge meeting. Jim is the attorney for HAD4, he's helping you guys negotiate this process now. He stated that, in his opinion, these assets don't belong to the communities, they don't belong to the towns. The HAD board has the authority to transfer them. That's his belief, he may be right. And
Well, if you go with HAD one opinion, that's in fact what they're saying. But I think the problem has been the interpretation of dissolving the hospital with distribution of the asset versus transformation, dissolution, whatever you want to call it, the charter. They're two totally different things.
Well, at the end of the
We're
day,
not
there's no
looking-
HAD.
We are not looking, right. The HAD doesn't apply to the year 2019. That's why there are no more HADs
But it's still
in
here.
the state. Huh?
It hasn't been dealt with. It's still a municipality
Correct.
in a sense. It's 13 towns that create this entity. Rick?
As far as I can see, there's no Maine state statutes or laws leading to what should be done, what not should be done. Any laws as far as hospital districts. The only law that we have to go by when it comes to the hospital districts is the charter. And the charter is very clear that the HED4 to be dissolved, not the hospital, the HED4, which is the hospital administrative district, which is and does belong to the 13 towns.
But the charter does not address any merger situation. It does not fit
It's the only
anything
thing
that,
we have.
let me finish please. It does not fit anything that occurs in the year 2019. And the problem is the separation of the dissolution of the hospital, okay, and its assets, which you are correct, must occur through a town vote, versus the possibility of a quote merger. It clearly states in the charter that governance occurs through the board of directors, okay? It clearly, it clearly, and if you look in the charter, it clearly states that. So I think there is a dichotomy there, and we're talking about semantics. And as I said, at this juncture, okay, I think you gotta forget it and figure out a solution that works for everybody.
Right, and I agree with that. The issue is here, the charter is the only thing that we have. And if it is not compatible, why not take it to the,
I'm sorry, excuse me for a second, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay.
why not take it to the citizens to vote to alter the charter to accommodate this by happening, maybe by the way of, instead of anonymous vote, by a majority vote. So the communities here know exactly what's going on, have a voice in what's going on, and makes the decision to, if you give them proper information, if they're educated about what's going on, I'm sure that you'll get a correct votage of the public to either say yes, let's alter, or have the legislator amend the charter to let us vote by way of majority vote instead of the full vote. So I think
Ricky, that may in fact happen. I don't know that. That may in fact happen. I don't know.
I think the big issue here is all of these communities are kept in the dark. You don't know what, all they say is everything is left up to you guys, which I believe you guys don't have that authority.
That's your opinion.
According to the charter, according to the only law.
That's incorrect. That is absolutely incorrect. And it's said, if you take precedent of law and go back to the HAD1 charter, which already is law, and I've read it to you, it clearly states it is up to the board of directors of that hospital to make that decision, and does not require, okay, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Okay?
So why isn't it done?
I have no idea.
I mean, you've got high-powered attorneys, why isn't this just done?
Again, I'm not an attorney, so I can't tell you that, but I would bet you, okay, that it's within the scope of the negotiations that are going on right now.
I would say, if you're correct, it's gonna happen anyway, so.
Again, it's
My
not-
opinion is about this is because this isn't the only town with this conversation. Every town is having this same reaction to
Understood.
this. So why not propose the idea to take it to the voters, have the vote, and expedite the process.
I think that will become part of the legislators' decisions. I think it will become part of the
But my
negotiations
question
through
is, why
Mayorville,
not do it
and I
and
think it's going to
expedite?
be a big part of what goes on through Northern Light. What I'm just telling you, okay, and I hope I'm wrong, if this goes on further with the financial situation at this hospital, okay, what's going to happen is we're not going to have a shot at a merger, and we will lose healthcare in the area. That's what I'm worried about. I'm
Okay,
just
so-
telling you what I'm worried
I
about.
understand that. So why not expedite the vote?
We've been trying to expedite.
We can't,
the vote.
we're not blocking this
We
vote.
can't either.
Well, if
I'm
you
not
guys-
talking
But
about,
I-
you know, there's a lot of, I think there's stuff that gets leaked out of many of these towns by many people, which are in fact the true facts. People have taken up sides here and there. Again, that's not the issue. All I'm worried about is whether we have healthcare in this issue. We have tried and tried and tried to,
Nobody
in
has
fact,
come-
move ahead. Okay?
Nobody has come here with
Because
a
right
asking about a
now, it
vote.
is in the hands of the legislators. Obviously, they're trying to do the best job that they can. What the holdup is, I have no idea. Okay, and now you are absolutely correct.
But
We need
I
to
honestly
move on.
feel that if you had a vote tomorrow, let's just hypothetically, if we could have a vote tomorrow in the 13 towns, and the majority, we'll go with the majority, I don't know the best way. So if the majority of the people of the 13 towns approved the decision for this to merge, and that decision went to the legislatures, I would almost guarantee, would 100% back this whole thing. And it would take this whole thing, instead of going to the attorney generals, to the legislatures, and the direction this is going, as I see it, is this is prolonging this whole process.
No. Yeah, we've
Here's
been
where I
at-
see your
we've
problem.
been at this for 5 years.
A vote is either required or it isn't. If the current board is correct, and they have total jurisdiction, they have the authority to do exactly what they're proposing, and it doesn't require the towns to vote, then you don't get a vote. If you're required to vote, that means the charter is different than what they're interpreting it. And I'm guessing that your attorneys don't want you to concede that point, because you don't believe that that's the case. That's just a guess.
Well, I personally believe that, in fact, your interpretation is correct. Again, not that I'm a peacemaker, but I will tell you, I would like to see how, and I don't have the answer right now. I'm not sure anybody has the right answer. I hope they're working on the right answer, because it's now gone above certainly the hospital to the legislators. But the answer is getting as many people satisfied with however this thing goes down. All I'm concerned about, and coming to you with, just letting you know for information, we get down this road far enough. If we lose this institution and we have an urgent center here, run by somebody who we have no idea, we're never going to get a hospital back in this area. And again, it's the delivery of healthcare to our people in rural America. I practiced here 30 plus years. People trusted me. You guys voted me in here, and I love doing my job. But I am so concerned about this, Dale.
So can you ask that question?
I would.
Why can't we go to the 13 towns? This is not about the right or wrong of who has the authority.
It's an
This is-
academic point at this point.
Exactly. My question is, can you go to the 13 communities to get their input if they're in favor of doing this or not?
I believe-
And then that way there, whether or not you have the right as a board to do this, or the people, if you have that answer as a board, and you have all 13 communities telling you as a majority, we don't want you to do this, that should tell our board something.
Right.
If you do have the people behind you, that being said, when you go to the legislation, that should also say something for you.
Right.
And it should expedite the entire process.
Right. First of all, my prediction is if you, me, if we went to the public throughout the 13 towns, my prediction is, with regard to merger, everything that's going on, the possibility of taxation, this, that, the next thing, loss of care, et cetera, my prediction is this merger would go through. I think the majority of people would vote and want a merger, okay? what you're saying is what I think is trying to be figured out right now. I think it is somewhat out of the bounds of the hospital because it has gone to the legislature and they're trying to figure it. That's what I perceive.
From what I hear
Maybe
from
I'm
our
wrong.
legislature is they don't wanna make this decision because it hasn't gone to the vote.
They have to make the decision.
I understand that,
They
but,
have to make the decision.
but they may not wanna make it in that favor.
If
If the
they
townspeople voted, it would be, actually, Paul Stearns put in the paper.
If they
He felt that
decide,
it should go
though,
to a vote.
if Dale, if they decide to put it into part of the new amendment, the new law, whatever you want to call it can be up to them. So if they're calling for that, they may in fact be pushing towards exactly that. I don't know how that's going to work.
I'm just confused why the board of the hospital hasn't wanted to do that, is my thing. Why would you want the support of your 13 communities to move this to the legislation?
Well, and again, I think one of the first meetings that we went to was actually Sangerville. And I think there were, and this is my own interpretation, I think there were issues, I think the presentation, I think things could have been smoother. We were, I think, pretty rookie at that time in what we're doing. I think some of the, or a number of the other presentations that have occurred have been much better. I think the idea of having the consultant here, I think Mike, you had brought this up about a major multi-million-dollar merger and having a consultant. Well, guess what? We've got one, and I think that has also made a difference. I can't, I guess, understand in my own mind, because of the stakes at the end are so important, why we are where we are right now. I'm not sure, and I don't know, and I don't have an answer to your question. But I think within the next, I hope, week or two, we will have a definitive answer to that. Where are we going to move within the bounds of past law, present law, interpretations? There's still, legal actions, trying to figure that all out. But I would predict, because in the interest, the board certainly appreciates it, of moving along on this thing. As I said, every month that we lose more money in that hospital, okay, and we just become less and less attractive, okay, and there's only one suitor. That's the problem. It's not like we can go to St. Joe's or we can go to Maine Health, okay. This is it.
I do have another different hospital question, but different route. A while back, and actually we learned about it that night here in the meeting, but it was in the paper about the Guilford family that felt that closing and how it wasn't feasible, and we couldn't get you can't get people to come and blah blah blah. So that was all the reason why that had closed. It was 2 weeks later, it was in the paper that the hospital bought Dexter with the physician retiring. And myself personally, I was very confused, and I did mean to reach out to you, and I just busy and with work, and I hadn't. So that's why I'm bringing it up tonight. And I've had others ask me about that. But how did that end up happening that way? How did we can't staff one building on a lease, so we got out of that, but we actually purchased another.
That's a great question. First of all, let's address Guilford, and I am beyond saddened. I mean, we struggled with this. To me, it's a great loss. I think it was the board's feeling, less financially, okay, and more from delivering quality care, that we were very concerned, okay, not being able to get people. We tried to recruit, okay, for that, and there was no way. And I was concerned as a physician, okay, forget about being a board member, that if we can't deliver quality of care to this community and to all communities, we shouldn't be delivering any quality of care. We're better off closing that clinic, okay. To the Dexter situation, I think some of that's still in limbo. Dr. Reddy, okay, and I'm not sure whether he's going to donate that, whether this is a temporary situation with regard to, and I don't know the details of dollars or anything else that exchanged, but this was a situation based on his retirement, which is at this juncture, I think it's only 6 months. So this was a temporary measure to allow him to stay within practice, okay, so that his patients wouldn't be abandoned, could be pushed throughout the community system, throughout the hospital. So it's certainly a different issue, okay, than the closing of the Guilford Clinic. Obviously, what would happen, should the merger go through, would be with the new Sangerville Clinic, we would be able to man this, which I think would be fantastic, between Greenville and ourselves, be able to use this new beautiful facility and really be able to give better access, so when you called up and looked for an appointment, you weren't waiting.
Oh, I get all that, but I mean,
Whatever. So
as an
that's the
outsider,
plan.
not involved at your level, obviously, but for me, and I think a lot of citizens that are seeing all these news articles, those two articles were so contradicting of each other that it put another level of doubt in the HAD,
I think
in the truth of the HAD.
I think the details, probably, I think most of them probably are worked out, and again, I can't speak to it because I was not part of that negotiation, and in fact, I don't know all the details, so I wouldn't even pretend. I just know the situation, having talked to Dr. Reddy, who called me.
No, I don't need to know any of the detail, but I'm just, so you know, when I read an article, and I read an article that says everything that we've heard over and over and over, how rural healthcare and we can't staff and we're gonna have to close this facility that's a lease. And then 2 weeks later, I read another article that, 8 miles down the road, we're gonna purchase a facility and that we can staff that one. So there again, I don't wanna, but it gave a very bad perception, is
And
what I'm
Dale,
saying.
one of the other problems with all these articles, I've got them all, I mean, all these articles, I don't know whether it's an op-ed, an ed, I don't know whether the input has come from the person who's writing the article, the hospital, the board, I mean, I'm confused half the time. So again, in terms of the true details of whatever that is, if you have a question like that, or Mike has a question like that, and it's specific, that's a very good one, okay? Mike, you had one.
Did we buy it?
Huh?
Did we buy it?
I'm not sure if we bought it.
Well, you guys would have to vote on it, wouldn't you?
Again, I don't know that, or whether we're renting it, or whether there was talk at one time of it being a donation, okay?
So as far as, you
I'm not
can't
sure.
recall that it's come to the board as a vote that we're gonna purchase this yet, or that we have purchased it.
I believe the discussion at the board had to do with bringing, and again, this is just my recollection, more of Dr. Reddy on as a member, an employee of the hospital. That's the discussion.
Well, I mean, as a citizen, I mean, that's as I read that was I read the article as, that facility has a retiring physician going out, so I'm reading it as, you're gonna have to find somebody to put in there again. And you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So, but it's like, well, why would we close something and then take on the same scenario? That was my other
Because
question.
he's retiring?
Correct, but you're gonna have to staff it.
Oh, you bet we are.
But we just said we couldn't. That's my
And
confusion.
guess what? We have been looking for someone in Dexter for a long time, just as in Guilford. Recruiting in rural America today, okay, for any physician, okay, or a non-physician provider, is a bear. I mean, we work on it all the time. That's also part of the problem, which we're hoping that if in fact we do the merger, we will have the recruitment efforts, or at least the rotational efforts, through the Northern Lights system, where we will be able to at least guarantee that we can start stocking places. So,
But isn't Northern Lights now, because this was another article, there again, I don't know about truth of these articles.
which article?
There was an article a while back about Northern Lights, nothing to do with man. But there was an article about Northern Lights, about how they are having problems staffing in rural Maine, and that they were gonna start using this outside firm to staff. And there was, within that article, there was all kinds of references of I don't know how to word it, upset or not, maybe upset or not happy because this actual company is the one, Northern Lights would no longer have the control to say that I need 4 people to staff this area for the week. This outside company is gonna be the one that's gonna say, you need 3.5.
My understanding though was, and again, I have a recollection of the article, that mostly dealt with a hospitalist organization. I don't know whether they had written, I believe that there's a plan in place organizationally in terms of rotating. I mean, I think there are over 1,000 providers that they have within their system, so.
But the way I read it,
I
though, this
think-
new company was gonna oversee all
But I had
this.
to, I think that.
And I was
had
just
to do-
wondering if that was gonna,
I believe it
take
was
over
with
for us.
hospitalists, and again, I may be right.
so, but that hasn't, as far as, that would be a question, another question, I guess. Is if we do have a merger, is Northern Lights gonna control the staffing? Or would we fall under the same, as this new group or whatever is gonna staff a lot of the areas for them? Is that company gonna be the one responsible for
No, I
staffing?
think
or-
it would be local board. First of all, in terms of hospitalists within our own hospital, in terms of Mayo, our community, we were able to recruit a gentleman, and and he actually, because of the whole shutdown, going through the process of his visa, et cetera, he's now been totally approved, so we'll be able to come on earlier, and we will be fully staffed with regard to hospitals, so I don't think it's an issue. I think most of that kind of control will come under, as will employees, under the guise of the local board. That's my understanding.
George?
Just 3 things that I've observed as a citizen. It's my understanding that the board is waiting for the legislature to make legislation to be presented to the legislature by a legislature to satisfy the board.
Well, let me just clarify that if I can, George. What they're seeking to do is to amend the charter, transform the charter. I don't know, I'm not sure what language I would want to use, but what they want to do, just like in the HAD1 situation, is they want to create a 501c3 nonprofit, non-stock corporation to be able to then go ahead and do a merger. Under the present law, you cannot take an HAD and do that.
But we're counting on the legislature to do this in a timely fashion. It's not gonna happen timely. How long is Northern Lights gonna wait? And how long is the hospital board gonna let it bleed to the point that we're 10, 12 million in the hole? Those are big concerns that I have. I mean, if you're counting on the legislature to get this done this session, I think that's a pipe dream.
Well, and you are probably correct. However, the way the HAD1 was done, and it was in fact introduced as an emergency legislative piece of work. And I guess they can fast track it and go on very quickly. So I think that is the intent of how that would go. Okay, our board, your board, we can't push any harder right now. It is in the hands of the legislators. But again, I really want to stress the most important thing is, and my primary responsibility is to all of you in our town, is if there are questions and concerns, just as you've had, and I've pushed for every single one of them, from straw polls to EMS, to your concern about, are you going to guarantee us staying open? If I don't have that input, I can't go and fight for us, okay?
Push for a vote so we can show our legislators we want it.
What's that?
Push for a vote of the 13 communities so we can show our legislation that we're all behind you. I seriously,
hear you.
I really strongly believe that all that is gonna do is expedite your process. Because I have the same concerns as George, and the only way to speed up your legislation is to show that you have all of the support of your communities.
I have not been privy to those meetings with the legislators, but well, I'm talking about in Augusta now. At Mayo I was on one meeting. But I would predict and hope that within the next week, hopefully, if they in fact move along, we will have an answer to that, which may in fact be part of that whole thing. They could amend the law tomorrow to say, okay, and if Northern Light agreed and Mayo agreed and everybody agreed, you know, we wanna have a majority of this, or do it this way. I mean, they can mold that right into that law. That would become the law, and that's really what it's gonna come down to, okay? And if they feel so strongly about it, and put it in that way, unless it's followed, guess what? It isn't gonna happen. So, again, that's why I say it's in their hands. I don't see any more that we can do as a board, okay, than what we're already at in terms of moving this thing along. And that's my concern, is you know, I don't wanna lose healthcare.
I just, Mr. Stearns did a great job in his letter, I think, articulating some of the frustration that at least I feel. I think you can be critical or concerned about some of the elements of this proposed merger and still care about healthcare, care a lot about healthcare. Just because you look at this thing and have some reluctance maybe to move ahead with it, doesn't mean you don't care about healthcare. In fact, I was at the Dexter meeting, and one of your physicians came out on the sidewalk with me and said, you know, the stuff that you're asking makes a lot of sense. So, and I know he cares about healthcare. So it isn't just all one team and all the other team. I think we have a significant asset, these 13 communities do. It could do a lot of things. Maybe it won't be a hospital. Maybe this merger goes through and unfortunately Northern Lights finds that it's just as hard as you guys have found it is, and it goes away. If that happens, we'll look back and say that this was a huge mistake, because this asset could do other things for these communities. And those are the kinds of questions that we're just asking, that's all.
It's either a hospital, Mike, or it's not a hospital. There are no other variables.
Could it be an
hospital-
emergency room?
Huh?
Could it be an assisted
Well,
living
if
center?
that's the
Could it
case-
be,
If that's the case, and that's what I would like to see prevented.
this is
And
exactly what happened in Booth
I've
Bay.
talked about this before, okay? I would like to see, okay, not losing services. What happens when you lose, and you have to lose now because you're cutting back, potentially OB? There's no OB.
But what
That
happens in
concerns
60
me.
months?
What happens when you lose orthopedics? What happens when you lose urology, you lose ENT, and you're gonna call for an appointment to Bangor and it's gonna be 6 months, okay? Maybe I'm being selfish and saying, oh, well, maybe we have too much. We don't. We deserve it as rural people to have exactly that. That's what I'm saying exists. Let's hope we can keep it. Is there a guarantee? You are absolutely correct. There is no guarantee.
I've talked to physicians that believe it's a foregone conclusion that they're gonna close it. They don't think that there's a guarantee. Now, they may be wrong, but that's just what they believe.
Nobody knows that. Nobody knows
Well,
that.
but it has happened.
Okay.
It happened to the folks in Booth Bay.
Well, I mean, look at Lincoln in bankruptcy right now. What's going to happen there? I don't think, they say they're gonna open. I have no idea.
One thing we know is we will never go through bankruptcy. That cannot happen. So that isn't a scenario for us.
But again, if you look at stuff like the Navient report and stuff, again, this isn't just us. This is the entire United States in terms of critical access hospital. And again, I'm selfish because it affects us, and there is absolutely no guarantee down the road. But if we can preserve as much as we possibly can and have health care and not have an urgent care center where now you have no control of quality, okay? You have no control of quality. You are getting a Band-Aid station. We're better off never having a Band-Aid station in this area. That doesn't answer any medical needs at all. So, you know, that's my point. I think, again, I'm hoping in the next week, maybe two, we're going to have an answer to this where we can really sit down and dig our teeth. All of us. I'm talking about all of us. And again, I'm biased because of us, but I'm talking about everybody. Now, this question and answer period that I had Lois post on there, I think it's really important that we all attend that, okay? Northern Light is going to be there also, and I think questions like all of yours, communities, etc., I think are absolutely key. It'll be in the 4 places it's been advertised. And again, I think a lot of the questions that I couldn't answer because of contract issues, and I couldn't, I think those things are all going to be absolutely out in the open. I think your question about votes and this and that,
I will say regarding the vote, I mean, this isn't an official motion or anything, but I believe that this board would support, if you came to us and said, we'd like a vote on this, we'd take the necessary steps so that we had a meeting.
I would be in favor of putting an emergency town meeting together as fast as we could to
So-
get you a vote.
That's
I
right.
mean,
So we're
just to
not gonna
help
obstruct.
make this-
If you want a vote, you'll get one.
Yeah.
I believe. It's not an official motion.
What I will
but-
do, and I will vow to do, the minute I know where both sides have come together and the legislatures, the legislative body, meaning our four people, once that's together and we know exactly what direction they're going to, we're all at their mercy. I will bring it to you all, and we will know exactly what direction we're going in. Again, I'm just concerned about moving along.
Is there any concern with having the meeting in Guilford and not doing it at one of the schools? There's not gonna be much capacity where you guys are having that. I think personally, I think that's a very bad move.
Jody brought that up. I was not aware. I don't know what the decision was, Dale. I don't know. And if in fact that is the case, and again, I just don't know, I will bring it.
I would suggest
the administration.
changing that as soon as possible. I mean.
Cause that's
you're
for
not gonna
all
s-
those towns in this wing.
Sure, I mean,
It's
you're
not gonna
expecting
work
all of
over
us to
there.
fit into that, and I've been to many funerals that don't fit in that building.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
yeah, we were too.
so I mean, I would really, actually, I would really suggest the high school, if you could, because they have bigger bleachers and you can seat more people.
That's a good
They have a
suggestion.
good PA system, everybody would be able to hear. The middle schools would be all right, I guess, but I think you'd seat more at the high school.
That's a great suggestion, and I will bring it up tomorrow.
Cause they're gonna come all the way from Monson, all the way, Sangerville will probably go split between the two venues, but.
There's no way you're not gonna overfill that place.
And I think, that, the more people that are there and the more questions that are asked,
The better shot you have.
better off we are.
Yep.
Let me
But I just think I think it's, another thing, it's perception, but I think when people see that you're trying to hold a meeting in a small venue, it's throwing the perception that you don't want many people to come.
Yeah, well,
Which I know is not what you personally are trying to do, but there again, I think this is another thing that, how the public is viewing some of this stuff.
I will find out. It's a great question. I will find out.
When was it scheduled?
What's that?
When was it
At
scheduled?
the church.
At the church.
Oh.
I'm not sure of the actual numbers there, but like I said, I've been there on a couple of different times for functions and, they don't fit, so.
Okay, I will definitely bring it up. And again, just going back to the issue with the FOIA, the town can decide whatever they want. I don't see personally where any of that information relates to the merger or what goes on. in the
No one said it
hospital.
did.
Huh?
No one said that it did.
Well, why even bother with it?
Well, the rumor, essentially, I guess in a sense they did say, it. The rumor was that, this person was gonna be financially enhanced to the tune of like a 100% increase in severance. And this was essentially a handout. Now, I don't believe that happened, but I was trying to disprove it. And you would certainly know this.
What I do know is that the CEO, and again, I know that it's not PC anymore. People don't use golden parachute. I can't remember what they're using. There's another word for it.
Well, that was actually the phrase that was
I know,
thrown at me.
it's a
so.
dirty word in business, I guess. I don't know. But as part of her original contract, as is every single CEO in the state, there is a provision for that quote parachute. I know the board did discuss potential and extension, and again, in terms of, I just don't remember.
Supposedly, the existing contract was for a 1-year severance, essentially, and that after this thing started to get some traction in or around October, the board decided to make it 2 years, which I found that interesting if that were true, and that was the only reason I requested it. And I assumed that her contract wasn't any different than my town manager's contract. And that was why I didn't think it was a big deal to ask for it. Because people have asked for Lois's and they get it.
Also, just for clarification, so people know, the board, which I find an interesting process, and I think it's a good process, the board never makes a decision on a salary. We actually hire a consultant who looks at all the critical access hospitals in Maine, highs and lows, and we usually pick a number that's in the middle to perhaps even on the slide. We also have a system in terms of points for bonuses, et cetera, which is very, very, very unique. I may have spoken to you about it. I mean, it's
So
a
that
really
would make
system.
this alleged increase impossible. Because, I mean, you didn't bring a consultant and that said, yeah, let's double our parachute. I mean, that's not what happened. But that's what they were saying happened, so.
Again, I will look into that. The initial compensation with regard to basic compensation, as I said, comes through a consultant, not through the board. That's not a decision that, from a fiduciary standpoint, I don't think the board's ever, or the executive committee, that's where it starts, and then there's a compensation committee, and then it's voted on, in fact, by the board itself. So I don't, it was done for exactly that reason, to be in an absolutely unbiased situation. I mean, the demands, for hospital workers today, are pretty significant.
But you can understand a rumor that if that got doubled in at that time frame, it wouldn't look very good for the hospital or the board. It would be a concern.
I don't remember, and I don't even remember, I don't even know whether we had ever seen the consultants. It was reported to us that way. But I can look into it. When you're having to pay a starting orthopedic surgeon, okay, $600,000 or $700,000, I mean, healthcare costs have just, this is part of the problem. I mean, we don't need to get into that discussion. They've just gone out of control. And again, for a small hospital to stay up with that, and I'm going to predict we will lose some services. I think, again, now, can Eastern Maine solve all those problems? I have no idea. But right now, with the financial situation, if in fact we're going to try to stay up and look a little bit better, my prediction is we will lose some financial services. Some clinical services. I don't know. Any other questions I can answer?
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to make it clear to everybody that I'm not saying this is good or bad or what's going to happen is going to happen, but my concern is if you do not follow and go through this deal totally 100% according to the laws, which is the charter, then if you change and alter the charter without the consideration of the board of people, you very well could end up when there's so much potential assets there, or the rumor of assets, or what's,
Book value assets.
You could end up with a major lawsuit in the future if you do not follow the proper procedure.
I think if you maybe you didn't hear, if you're listening to what Mike says,
I did,
which is exactly on, Ricky, is one side says there's power here, another side says no, there's power here. It's not clear within the charter. Okay, I think it is. Again, if you look at law precedent based on HAD1's issues and how it's stated with regard to the Board of Governance being Board of Directors, that's my opinion only, that's not clear. Okay, and again, I hear exactly what you're saying. Okay, and again, that's why I'm saying I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to find out exactly where that goes. I think that's all we're going to have to wait on, because now it's going to become a legislative issue.
Yep, and I just wanted you to understand that as far as anything that I say, it's only my concern is as far as following and abiding by the laws, so that there's
I agree.
no future problems later.
Well, I think, again, most importantly, if there's a way through this thing so that everybody can walk away 80% happy, you know, I think it deals much better for the communities themselves and for relationships at the hospital. You know, that's the other thing that's risk no matter what happens. Okay, all of a sudden, and those of us who were here when Dexter was running a hospital and Milo was running a hospital,
born
all
there.
of a sudden, remember, they shut down and Mayo came in. And I mean, I had patients who came into the office and said, geez, I really like you, but I'm not going to this hospital because they took away my hospital in Dexter and they took away my hospital in Milo. I mean, I don't think we need to go that direction. So anyway.
I tell my kids I was born in Milo at the hospital. I said, there's no hospital.
I mean, I heard that for years in my practice. Anyway, I appreciate your time and appreciate.
If you would get that venue changed, let Lois know that she'll put it on the website.
Yes.
Well, I think the venue's been fantastic. Louis,
No, I mean,
No,
for
I
your
mean, as far as
meeting.
the church to the school. If we
Oh,
could-
no, I'm gonna look at that tomorrow and absolutely, I will get, I did not realize that. Actually, Jody mentioned that to me initially. No, Lois has been great with helping me with get stuff. And I think the more stuff we put on our website for our people, I think the better off we are. I really do. I like the idea of putting the merger and everything else on there. I think was really, really good. So
I think that website gets a lot of traction. I think a lot of people are using that.
no, it's been, I think, terrific. And I think we're one of the very few, I think we have done the best of all the towns of, in fact, giving public information. So that's good.
Well, thank you a lot for that.
Well,
Appreciate
and
it.
thank you for your time.
On to C, appointment of Jerry Rush as fire warden.
As I was going through the appointments book, we have to have a fire warden. State statute says we have to have a fire warden, so, and typically it's your fire chief, so that's Jerry.
Do you want to make a motion?
Oh, I'll make a motion to appoint Jerry Rush as our fire warden.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? We all vote, it's unanimous. Congratulations, Jerry.
Still want to stand?
Item 8, old business, foreclosed property, East Sangerville Road.
So I met with one of the children and she said that they will not be putting in an application for the alternate disposal process.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to come up with a minimum bid. So that's what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
That you would come up, and this is the packet that will get handed out to people, so this is the letter that tells them the directions on how to do it. This is the ad that's gonna go in the paper.
What's the tax valuation? 100%?
This is the policy. And this is the valuation with the detail of taxes owed. The land is $19,030. The building is $39,940.
60 grand. And what's
And they're
owed?
2353.53.
What was that last number?
23.
I know, but what was it for?
It's taxes. That's how
Oh,
much
oh, oh,
taxes
oh,
are
oh,
owed on that.
Oh, that's owed.
23,000?
No,
2,300.
2,300.
Yeah.
$53.53.
Wow.
And it goes up every day, I mean, because it's 3
Sure,
years
sure.
of taxes. And this is the property card and the map with the location, so that if anybody wants to.
And you may have
had-
said it, how many acres is it?
It
Couple,
is
if I remember right.
19,000.
2.7.
2.7, okay.
And in our policy, we don't have anything that says an about our minimum, right?
correct.
So we don't have any formula to make,
No,
to
it would
come
be nice
up.
if we
I
had
know.
something that said
Yeah,
we
sort of
should
a guideline.
minimum of 25% of valuation or. I don't
Well,
know
but
if
we
that's
have
always-
latitude to do whatever we,
Oh, we do.
I mean, we can set a minimum of 60.
Yeah, we definitely could do that.
And we also can say that we reserve the right not to accept.
Well, you have to say that, or you could get
Yeah.
in a, open yourself to liability lawsuit.
Sure.
So that's always in the ad.
So, I
have
mean,
the
you
right
could
to accept
try
or
it,
refuse.
we'll just, for sake of discussion, you say nothing less than 60. And if nobody bids at 60,
Oh, nobody's gonna bid for 60.
well,
It's a-
then you
I can
could
tell you
redo
that
it at
right now.
55, or you could do whatever you really want.
They're not gonna, tax acquired property never goes for full value. I mean, that's,
That's because you don't put a minimum. Honestly, I mean,
you won't get it.
I'm not
But we-
saying we would or we wouldn't, but I'm just saying,
Because,
If we
I mean, if
would've-
somebody was looking for a house in that manner, they'd go to a real estate agent and find a house.
Look at the piece of land that we sold over on the golf road.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that land was well above if we would've set a minimum.
None of us
We
thought
did
that was
set a
gonna
I know,
happen.
but I mean, it was well,
It did way
Yeah.
beyond.
It was
actually
very
sold at
Right,
a commercial
right.
level, I
it
felt.
sold, yeah, I think it's sold more than what
Yeah.
the recommended value, so, I mean,
But,
I agree with you, I don't,
I wouldn't-
I would not put 60 as a minimum, cause I think it's a waste of the time to put it out there.
I don't even know that I would put 20 as a minimum, I mean,
Oh, I would definitely do at least.
she said there are problems with it, and there are liens on it, other liens on it, not just the town's liens. So anybody that purchases it, I mean, it's right down here in the disclosure. It's your responsibility to discover these liens, and I know that there are more liens on there.
Oh,
And they also
That's huge.
have
Well, actually-
tenants in it, and it's their responsibility to evict the tenants.
oh, God.
Yeah, no, when you
Can I
acquire the house, you acquire the tenants.
Right.
Is there a
In
deed number
fact,
on here, 'cause you can very
He
easily look
specific,
up.
you remember he told us to meet?
It's, I
Don't
can tell
evict.
you what,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a deed, I already looked
Sell
it
it with
up.
the people.
Right, but I would tell you all the
And
liens
the
against
cat and the
it.
dog.
Well, it's got a lien for,
Whoa.
they had
That's-
roof and windows
Mhm.
through CDBG, and that's not down to the 10-year
Right,
non-replacement,
but does it should say what the lien value, the lien amount is?
It's around, I think it's around 2,500, might be 3,500 on that.
Total liens?
No,
Oh.
the additional, besides the tax lien, there's another lien.
Is there a mortgage?
There is not a mortgage.
So right there. 7, 8, page 32. Okay, I can look it up.
I did find that one other lien.
What, liens? Oh,
I'm
You're
being
right.
told by the family that, because she's in a nursing home, that the state has rights to it, but there's no lien in there. They haven't covered any assets through a lien process, so.
the state, she said?
Because
The
she's
state?
in a nursing home.
Oh,
Wow.
oh. Well,
I
because
thought
she
your
made,
primary residence was off limits.
No, I think if you're a
not
Medicaid
if you're in
recipient,
a nursing home, they can take, but they haven't
but I think it's,
enacted any of that. I mean, there's nothing in the registry of deeds other than our liens and that other lien.
the other one for the 25 or 3,500, okay,
Yeah.
alright.
That I could, I mean,
do we know what nursing home she's in?
yes, no. I have an address, it just came back to me today, it's in the file.
But there,
I think it's Old Town, somewhere in Old Town or Orono, maybe.
Huh, wow. And how long has she been in the nursing home?
3 years.
The state's getting their money, they're happy.
I mean, we would run the ad without a minimum and just put on the bottom of it, we were.
Well, we can put a minimum on that, I mean, I would suggest a minimum. I just don't think I would go try to, fish for all you're gonna get.
I was thinking like, honestly, I wasn't even trying to go with a number, I was trying to come up with like a 20%, 30% of evaluation, whatever that happens to be, is what I was trying to run in my head of a way to do it.
Right, and they've been getting the homestead exemption and the veterans exemption on it, so the taxes that are on there are gonna go up when somebody buys it, because they're
Sure.
not gonna get the homestead.
Well, and that's why I was trying to base that off the raw value.
They're not gonna lose much. Town's not gonna lose anything.
No,
No,
If we sell it,
you're gonna sell it?
right, and then.
So you're
Oh,
and
no,
then
the
it's
towns
gonna-
don't ever lose.
No,
No,
I know.
Right.
That's all.
but keep in mind, I mean, so if you put a minimum on there and it's too high and you don't get any bids.
Correct.
Yeah, we
That's
still-
why-
Advertising, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
150 to advertise every time, so then you gotta put it again, and so, I mean, just,
Well,
I don't know what's reasonable, I really don't.
My phone isn't, I can't get on the Wi-Fi, so I can't look that up.
A
So,
lot of entanglements when you got people living there.
yeah,
So, and are there relatives or just
relative.
relatives living in the house?
Have they given any indication as to whether they're gonna leave?
I've talked to one of the relatives and I said, most likely we will have it, the bid auction on May 1st, or May, whatever that first one in May is.
I mean, 30% is 18,000.
They will be out by then. She said that they're gonna tell them that they need to be out by then.
It's land value.
Who's gonna tell them?
You could look at it that, land value was
The
19.
person that I was talking to is Tony
I would think of 20.
Pinkham?
So I
What's
think
that?
20's not, I don't think that's.
That's
I
it's
bet
her
it doesn't.
daughter.
I bet a pizza it does.
She
I
lives
will
in
not
town.
bet you
It's
that.
Kelly Jordan's parents.
I will not bet you that.
not a
House,
20.
their
I
house,
will,
and
I
so it's
will,
one of his. I thought it was his.
I will
I
not bet
would,
you
daughter.
that.
I mean, I really think you're gonna see
Yeah.
35,000 out of that myself, but that's my own, if I was gonna make a guess, that's where I think you're gonna see that sell out.
So you're thinking the 3%, is that 30%?
30% was 18, so you're still under land value. I think that's honestly why I was thinking the 20,000, because your land value is 20,000. So if you was looking for a piece of property with no house on it, it ought to be at
Right.
least worth that.
Yeah,
Right, and
yeah.
Well, what did that lot do on
Now,
Goff?
does this lot have a shared well? Does
I don't
this
think so.
piece of- It doesn't?
I don't think
I don't think so.
it should be.
Because I mean, if it's got well and electricity, it's,
When you get home and you have internet,
Yeah.
if you look that number up,
okay,
if you go
Okay.
if you type
Book
in
and
Registry
page.
of Deeds Maine,
Because, yeah, Piscataquis County, if you do
You'll-
Piscataquis County, it's gonna bring you can look up the
Sure.
Registry of Deeds, and then you
Right.
go into Piscataquis, and then you can look up
okay.
by deed. Make sure
Okay.
you choose by,
book and page.
And
Because
that's book and page?
That's book and page. Yep.
Okay,
And actually, once you go on there, you can actually read the deed, so that will tell you if there's a shared well or an easement or
Okay,
whatever.
okay.
And you just keep going down under that, that's,
Okay.
you're gonna see
And if-
our lien,
yeah.
and then you'll see this other lien.
Okay.
Actually, be the
That
other way.
all
The other
yeah,
way
it'll be
first.
our two liens, and then, and just look at the dates, too. I mean, it goes back to 1959,
Yeah.
some of this documentation on there.
So, that's kind of the problem when you get into certain properties, because every single lien that's ever been there, you'll see a lien and a release, or a lien.
Yeah.
So when you get into an older property, you could be looking at pages by the time you.
I will tell you, this one, other than the 3 liens that I am aware of, is very clean. It was,
Which is.
if you put in his name, it's 1 page. If you put in her name, it's 1.25 pages.
So, yeah,
So,
Okay.
but there is another outstanding lien.
I would suggest 20,000. I don't see that property selling for less than that, but.
Well, no, I actually see one of us getting involved at that level, that just seems crazy. 20,000 just seems like, without a house on it, I think it's worth 20,000.
Yeah, just-
Oh, you know,
I see that.
I'm saying, if it was less than that,
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
with a checkbook would be buying that
So are
property.
we gonna
Yeah,
come
yeah.
up with that number tonight, or what are we doing?
Yes, I would like
We're
to
gonna
come up with a number.
Okay, so do we wanna go with 20? I'll make a motion that, we will put a minimum bid for the foreclosed property on East Sangerville Road. Did I say the minimum bid? A minimum bid of $20,000.
Second.
Not bad.
Yep. Any more discussion? We vote, and it is unanimous. The sooner we sell it, the sooner we collect our taxes.
I'm not gonna post it until April 1st, because that's technically after my 30 days that I
Sure.
had given her. But that's next week.
So
Okay,
when
yeah,
you do
yeah.
run that, where do you
No kidding.
run that? Just-
I run it in the 3 local, the Observer, the Rolling Thunder, and is the Gazette the same as the Observer?
No,
Nope.
The Gazette.
Okay.
Gazette is free and, yeah.
What
Yeah,
about
it's free
Craigslist?
advertising. Oh, definitely, I'd throw it on
I
Craigslist.
put it on there, it's free, and it gets a lot of eyeballs.
A lot of, might search that
It's
quite
down-
regularly for property
downstate.
under. No, it would
Yeah.
surprise you how many property under
Yeah,
Sangerville
yeah.
show up on that, I look at it quite frequently.
Oh, no, send it where the money is. Get it down there.
Yeah, that road's open to ATVs, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes, it is.
East Sangerville, isn't?
No?
Oh, not down to Dowdy
We've
Hill.
never-
Yeah, but isn't that on the corner
We've
next
never
to?
been asked about, it's the Cleves end.
Yeah.
Down by the intersection.
Yeah.
And up, I think maybe 3 telephone poles, that's where the line is.
Well,
We've
you've got
never had
excellent-
anybody from there to Dowdy Hill ask.
Excellent access to the snowmobile trail.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah. That alone at this point makes it appealing.
Okay, on to the TIF.
Jody had asked to put that on for discussion. So this was the one that I had sent, final. I sent you three PowerPoints. This was the 3rd one that I said, this was by far the most, informative, so, I'm not sure, did you have a chance to read through it? I mean, what
Oh,
do you-
yeah, oh, yeah. Did you read through
I
it?
did, all of them.
And what was your impression?
I don't know. A lot of what I read was they do them in a manner because they're using it as a way, or coming up with a way as an incentive for the people in the area for an investment, whether it be they're helping finance projects, or, you know, they're using it for borrowing tools to help that district itself grow. And I don't really think was our intent or what we plan to do if we did one.
Okay, and the thing that I thought, well, first of all, you had obviously suggested that we entertain that for the Abbey Fowler building. And this is the first time that we were able to look and see exactly what it all entails. And what I like is the sheltering of the money for 30 years,
30.
30 years. Is that, it's always 30 years? So you're sheltering.
If you can write it for less, but
Right,
why would
that's-
you?
Right.
Maximum is 30.
30 years. And so that was, you know, I know you had outlined it all verbally to us, but when you see that, you know, I thought this is worth looking at. And then to also, for me, to read what all these cities have done with the money for sidewalks, and we had talked about, well, what if it took care of all of our in-town plowing? I mean, it's pretty loosely structured. That was my impression. That you can earmark that money that you're sheltering. You're then not being evaluated for the school.
Right. So,
School,
I mean, so if
municipal taxes.
Right, and so if he gets it reassessed and it's under 100,000, and then when he gets it all remodeled and now it's $1 million facility, you've got 900,000 in value that you're not paying county tax on.
What does that really correlate back to?
What's our current-
Yeah, what would be?
What's our current total?
$900,000 tax be that we would be paying?
Right now, we're 75 million, right?
Yes, yeah, 76 million.
So what is, you know what I mean?
Whatever their mill rate
So
is.
it's like 12%.
But what you're not ever gonna get less tax from the building.
No, but this is
Agreed.
honestly, my thing is,
Because we weren't getting any tax from the building.
Right, so, I mean, so if we take that base price at 100,000, that's the tax that you can always assume that is gonna go into the town coffers as tax. The difference is what they call the captured value. And that's what you earmark for value for projects to do whatever else, whether it wants to be.
but that's
your
what I'm
walking
trying to
trail
understand
or-
is what that number's gonna be.
Multiplied by the mill rate, multiply the value by the mill rate. The captured value, so if your captured value is 900,000, you multiply it by the mill rate, and that's your
So what's that number?
easy.
revenue that you can put in
Keep
it.
it easy.
Say it's $1 million. So he comes in at 1.1 million.
Yep.
So it's $1 million. If our mill rate's 19, it's $19,000.
Right,
That we essentially doesn't go against our valuation relative
Towards
to
the
the county or the state or the SAD or, okay? all
and
those
it's
things.
money that you can do projects with that,
Well,
can
we did
either-
have to tag it in advance.
you do have to tag it in advance.
But we all agreed that.
The only project I wanna tag for 30 years is in town level.
Well, I say that's.
We're in town.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's a foregone conclusion, you'll
Correct.
spend that every year.
Right,
Correct.
we
That's-
will
well, that's the
always
thought
have to
process.
plow. We will
Correct,
always have
that's
to plow.
why I said that.
Or we'll always have to maintain the roads in town. I
Correct.
mean, you know.
But
I
you
mean,
know-
You'll
County
always
tax-
be able to spend that 19.
If we do
Right.
this, your county tax is gonna go up.
No, it's not.
Why?
Because the county still needs so much money to run.
He's saying you're subsidized, you're being subsidized.
Correct. That's all I mean, realistically, you're being subsidized. So, if everybody did this,
Right, everybody meaning every municipality?
correct. I mean, it's a subsidy is all it is. So, if the county still needs X amount of money to run, if
But,
they're not getting it
but
here, they're gonna.
the county is assessing your assessed value as far as the town.
Yep,
And that is sheltered. It's not, the county doesn't see that
correct,
amount.
That increase in value.
Right,
correct.
right.
If they did see it, your county tax would be less.
No, it would
Well,
be
everybody's
more.
county
It'd
tax
be
will be
more.
less. What he's saying is
It'd be less.
the entire burden is reduced.
Correct, cause your burden would be
Spread out.
reduced.
But
They'd be spread out.
every municipality can avail themselves of
They do.
this.
Exactly.
Guilford, for
No,
example,
right.
has a couple of big buildings that
Correct,
are,
right, and
Handled
they did
before.
have one and it's
They are?
actually run out.
well, the factory.
The one, but I think that's on the end now.
But they did it.
They did it, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So in a sense, the
Right.
communities that didn't have a TIF
Correct.
were carrying a little more water.
They
Correct.
are.
So now that's falling off, so now their value goes up, which, that's what I'm saying is at the end of the day, forget about this, but at the end of the day, the county needs X amount of money to run. Period.
Right.
Whether or not your value is, whatever your value is what's basing that at, is what I was saying. So if you, in theory, hide $1 million from the county, then that's $1 million less that they see. So their mill rate is gonna have to be higher than if that mill was part of that evaluation. it's
Except,
not
is there
split.
really any increase in cost? That building right now is a zero.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay,
That's- no,
so
it's-
if the building becomes
Correct.
a $19,000 tax revenue, it doesn't cost the county a dime.
Not yet, correct.
So there really was no loss or gain to the county. What we did was essentially shelter our new capital improvement.
Correct.
And
For
put
10,
it
what, 20,
right
30 years.
back into the town. I
Correct.
mean,
It's not a concern, my question is this big enough to warrant all of this
That's-
machination?
How much paperwork, how much,
Right,
what's it all
right,
entail?
yeah, well, that is a good question.
if it's
I
a
mean,
it's
The
$5,
original- once
$9
you
million
do the
building,
original
easy.
TIF, it has to go through town meeting to be approved. Once it's done, there's no paperwork after the
Oh, there has to
original.
be something.
every
Only when he
year-
does commitment, you just have to write it on the commitment
You
paper.
gotta account for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can
Now-
see where that's not.
And, I mean, does an attorney have to set up this
Yeah.
TIF?
yeah.
So there's-
There's
So-
a TIF consultant.
Okay.
And you do this before the improvements?
As soon as you
Yes.
can, right?
Well, the problem is we don't know that there will be improvement.
Well,
Well, that's true.
So to go through the
You
town,
That's-
can
that's a good
wait,
point.
you can wait, so say we wait till next year, say October, and he didn't do anything. So we wanna wait, because when you
Oh,
put it
we
in too early, you're gonna waste your 30 years.
Sure.
So you wait until you see him do improvements, cause it's as of April 1st. So if he doesn't touch the building until April 1st, and then he does nothing until October, well, you know he's probably gonna do anything until April 1st anyway. So then you've got until the next April 1st. When I was in Bradford, they actually went back like a year and a half. So that they could backdate my original value, but my 30 years didn't start until it was approved, so.
Do we have an actual value of the building today?
No, but I did tell Josh he needs to make sure he gets it reassessed.
Yes, he
And
does.
he said absolutely he will make sure it gets done before
Okay, when
commitment.
is he?
it costs us a lot of money.
Well, he can't even get in there right now
Oh,
anyway.
somebody is.
In the building?
There's all kinds of tracks all around that building right now. They're going right up over the snowbank. I just come
I
down
wonder
through that
if-
night and noticed it.
I can't imagine.
Just,
But we need it reassessed before we send him a tax bill.
Yeah, oh yeah, he will, he
Oh,
will.
yeah.
He
Oh,
will.
That's,
I mean, he
Um,
can change the values and stuff in the program right up until 2 minutes before.
I think
we-
until we have some idea of what the end value of this building is gonna be, we're a bit premature.
yeah, no, I agree, but.
But $1 million
you
is
know,
kind of the cutoff.
I had the feeling that we sort of put it to bed and said, no, we don't wanna do that, that's too much.
no, I
And-
wanna understand more about it.
Yeah, and
I-
then I really appreciated that you sent all these because it did allow me to, and you did explain it to us, but to see how they work.
I'm
and
a
how
visual.
These yeah, me too. So, and how these towns are taking advantage of it. And so I thought, we certainly have,
But I really felt that a lot of these towns are, yes, I don't disagree that they are using that money for projects, but I could definitely see where a lot of them are using money to benefit for assistance of people to make their own growth within the property.
well, and
Well,
that's
there was
a
some-
different,
yeah,
that's
economic.
another arm of a TIF, is
Yeah.
we could say, well, we're gonna
Correct.
give him, for the first 3 years, all of it back.
Correct.
Which is a huge incentive.
If our
I
assessed
don't
value,
see that, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
if it's lower, do we lose on revenue sharing? Is your revenue sharing based on your valuation?
Yes,
So if we hide $1 million, that's less revenue sharing we're gonna get.
no, that's the other way around. If you hide $1 million, that's more revenue sharing you're gonna
So
get.
we get more revenue sharing than Dover gets?
No, but if we
Increase.
If we
go
increase
from
our value,
where
because
we
it's
are to
based on your
X.
value, you get less revenue sharing if you have more income on tax revenue.
So it's a ratio. It's gotta
Yes.
be, it's income versus what, population,
I think so.
But
I looked
these
it
are
up
all the
on
numbers that we need to
web.
know,
They
right,
have it,
really.
it's on main.gov somewhere, it tells you
Okay.
how to calculate, revenue sharing, and then and of course it's based on sales too. So it's an assumed number, I mean, it's always proposed, but it's based on sales tax.
Right, and then the schools
And the school,
also.
yeah.
if we-
And I looked that
yeah,
up,
I
and you
can
can
see that, I
find,
can
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
that one, that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
That's like the county.
that's
Right.
another funding
Same idea,
formula
yeah.
one, where you would,
Even
Pay more to the
$10,000,
school.
if it's no pain to doing it, why not do it?
And dump it back
Right back into the
our
road.
town.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't even have trouble giving it back to him, saying, go for it. I'm just saying,
No, I
I'm
know,
just,
I know.
I'm
Well,
just
no,
saying, you
I
know.
know, just makes you.
Yeah, yeah, but those things are done. If you got a city with blight, and you wanna encourage people,
Yeah,
I think these, yeah, I can see where this, it worked in Lewis and Auburn.
Right, right.
But I can
Canal,
also see
along the
it,
canal,
and
it's all beautiful.
doesn't apply to this scenario because it's exactly what we said we wasn't gonna allow, but I could see where if this was a business district, where
Right.
you would do something, you know, if somebody was willing to build a brand new building with a certain amount of a commitment,
Right,
and the town was willing to help fund some new machinery so they could employ so many people for so long,
Yep.
then I definitely could
Yep.
see where, you
Yep.
know what I mean, all of that would flow and
yeah.
it's
yeah.
a double payback.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was thinking more of.
Yeah, yep.
How big is that TIF zone? Is it buying just everything in town, or is it certain areas?
you can have a TIF to a maximum of, I think it's 2% of land mass.
Okay.
Or something
And
like that.
Sangerville has a huge landmass, so, I mean, because I was thinking about that and figuring that out and saying, so our TIF, zone could be,
Well, you can have it, you
Quite
can
large.
have in many different places, but
right,
when you add all of these lands up, so if this is 2 acres
mm-hmm,
and it's 0.01%,
mm-hmm.
you know, and then
Number all?
number all, I mean, they can be another district. You can there's no limit on the number of districts
Right. No,
and the
I'm
number
sorry.
of
Go over the 2%.
locations. Just you can't go over the land mass.
Sure.
So
Total
we-
land mass of Sangerville.
Yeah, it's like 2% of the land mass of Sangerville.
You can almost imagine that there are towns that are maxing this out all over.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Right.
That's what I'm
I mean, the
thinking.
2% is the speed limit,
That's,
basically.
yep, and they're
Yeah,
like, we
you
need
gotta-
to get
So
another
you could have had a
this year.
TIF put in
Pull
on
out
Robinson's
pull
before
out
they
something over here, so you
remodel.
put this in over here.
That's right.
And
I
then,
can't pull
so,
it out, I
I mean,
don't
if you
think,
put
but
it
when
in
it
2 or
expires-
3 different locations, if
That's
you know
what
that
I'm
they're going to,
thinking.
change their,
I
It's
when
just
you
the
see-
rules.
Exactly, you just, that's exactly taking.
It's like a tax
advantage.
deduction.
that's right, that's right.
It's
Right.
the same way when you do your taxes and there's all those line items that say that you can deduct up to
And you know, when
$1,500 without a receipt.
And when you do that deduction, somebody else is paying Bill.
They are, I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I mean,
Rules, just play by.
That's
Right.
right, and you take advantage of the rule.
But when windows start going in and a roof goes on,
Yeah,
then we
and-
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
But it has
I
merit.
would like to keep it on our,
Yep.
Well, I would still like to know more information,
Sure.
because there's definitely some numbers here we need to look at.
Sure.
We need to understand how these numbers all work and they fit, and what does it all mean.
Yep. And for example, they don't have a say. I mean, it's up to us, well, it
It's up
goes to a
the
town vote.
Yep.
Okay,
The
yeah,
TIF
yeah.
goes to a town
Sure.
vote, yes.
Sure, okay, got it. Good, well, thank you.
Dr. Cabot could probably read this Latin that's on this.
Not anymore.
City of Auburn, you see the shoes in their emblem?
Sticky
Oh,
red
cool.
Trorsum.
Retrostrum. Not me, I never took any of that stuff.
It would be, I would.
Had plenty of Latin.
Well, we'll ask you to interpret this for us later.
I
Probably
taught Latin, but
choose
we didn't
something
get
that
to
would.
I'm
Okay,
not writing it for you.
All right.
correspondence? None.
Good, first time in, I got a text message last night from Seth, just so he did
Oh.
sent me a real, just wanted to know, he just said, hey Neil, the dude's get some gravel in that big hole in front of you, my place. That's a
Well, he
question.
texted me and I told him, I
Like
said, I'm not
6:45
sure
last night.
because,
Yep.
yeah, it's about
So I told
Just
him
after
yes,
that.
and all good, so.
Because when I talked to Chris, I asked him if he could
Yep.
get some gravel in there, and he said, well, it's
Yep.
frozen as soon as it's unfrozen, and then, so Seth texted me yesterday, and I said, if it's
Yep,
not
no,
frozen,
it's-
I'm assuming they did.
oh, sorry.
6:45 is when, I don't know when he called, we would talk to you, but this one.
It was earlier than that, but right about the same time.
Sunday night, 7:30.
I just have a question about correspondence. You mentioned that we got something back from the hospital, and I know I can't.
Yes, I mean, I can forward it to you,
No, but my question is, did you forward it to Mike and Dale?
just Mike.
Oh, just Mike?
In fact, I made the request.
Okay.
I asked Lois to make the request for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was just between the two?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Dale didn't get a copy?
No, but I can forward it
Dale
to
has
you.
a
Well,
copy.
I'd like to see it.
One more thing on the correspondence, and I forgot to bring this up last meeting, but, so I routinely seem to keep getting Facebook seems to be the new way to communicate, but, so anyway, I did get a correspondence from a citizen over in East Sangerville, and it was right after town meeting actually, and basically in a nutshell, very happy with everything that I got reelected because all of us work so well together, and very happy that the way things are going and how we're moving forward. The other thing, this particular person works a second shift, and really loves the audios.
Oh,
She
that's
can
good.
never make a meeting, but she is definitely one of your guaranteed that's listening to every single one.
Really?
It's
That's
how
good.
she,
That's
and
great.
she's been sending me some questions occasionally about what she hears, but, it was a very positive, the whole conversation, so I just wanna make sure that you guys both knew that,
That's
or all of
great.
us knew that.
That's
sorry.
good.
And I can delete that one, so I'll remember it was there. And that's it for me.
Okay. Anything else?
I forgot, I just wanted to check those, I'm gonna harp on this till it's done. How are you standing with CMP, their crane, getting big trees removed off that cemetery?
I haven't heard anything from
But I
them.
mean, you're gonna have to just beat them like you're gonna have to, cause I know there's other cranes around, I mean, it's not, they're not in Portland, I mean, Browns and Corona has big cranes, and I just don't know. But it's just gonna be a shame if 20 stones get wiped out.
Yeah, I know.
Down here?
No, French's Mills.
Oh, that big
Those
pine,
trees,
that big
yeah.
pasture pine?
4 of them. No, right by the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 or 4 big trees there, they gotta go.
And it's really, honestly, I mean, I understand that CMP typically clears the side of the road
Yeah,
by
but-
the power line, but it's not CMP's responsibility, that's our responsibility.
Right, but the lines are the problem, why the
I-
town can't handle
correct.
that.
Yeah.
So,
But have we actually got an Ingstrom over there to look at that? And he
He
said.
said he can, he's gotta have a crane.
Too big.
yeah,
Too big.
so,
The tree is too big?
They're too tall.
Did we try anybody else?
No, he said that there isn't anybody else in the area. I'm sure Engstrom's would know that he works with people
Yeah,
who do
he'd
that.
call the
Yeah.
He
helpline.
said Portland is about the
but I
closest
can't,
you're gonna get for
you
a
know,
train
I
to
don't
clean.
understand that
One of those.
Ingstrom's couldn't, get Brown to come up and help him get those trees out, I mean,
Well, he probably could have, but you're looking at $10, $12, $15,000.
We need a price, that's what we need, then it would help us
And I
decide.
would call somebody else. I mean, there's gotta be other people that,
The guy from.
That's, you know what, back, we're almost done, but, you did send us,
He was nuts.
some information regarding perpetual care.
I did, and that's on my list.
So,
If under,
and there was, the amount of money was like $7,200.
Yeah.
But I'm still unclear as to what the basis is. Are you saying that the total amount, you subtract 72 from that, and now that's your basis?
So I actually found the book that has everybody, so when somebody purchases a lot, the base lot amount goes into perpetual care. And
when did
then
we start that?
a long time ago. The records I had was well before the 90s. I think it was in the 70s. And we did some research through town reports, and I think they were in the 60s and 70s when we
So a
had
portion
perpetual-
or the entire amount?
The entire amount goes into
Okay.
perpetual care. And then, of course, now we're earning full 1% on that. So we'll be able to earn more. But so everybody that buys it, then I just added everybody to the list. I've updated it. The last time it was updated was 2007. So everybody's on the list now. I've got my base amount that we can't touch. And that's how I arrived at.
So over the 40-odd years of accumulating these assets, we've only come up with $7,200.
72,000 is in perpetual care.
Right, but our gain-
7,200, well, no, because they used to, and this was where we found in the reports of the past, in the 60s and 70s, they would take that interest and fund whatever they were doing for mowing or whatever.
Okay.
For perpetual, for
If it
the
started
care
in
of
the
the
seventies,
cemeteries.
how did they even have enough interest to fund any?
Well,
Because
mowing
the
was
interest
cheap.
rates.
The interest
in the
rates were
70s
really
15.
high.
We weren't investing.
They were high.
Yeah,
They
but
were
you
getting
can just put it in the bank,
$1,500
you
a
got
year
15.
Correct.
in interest,
And
and they
mowing
were
wasn't
spending it.
$1,300.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in the seventies, you only had $1,500 in it.
But more to the
No, they
point,
had
to me
50,000.
anyway, is they were utilizing it. We're not investing it.
Right.
We're
Correct.
not using it to make a budget offset for mowing or monument repair or tree removal. And my question is, why not?
Right, we can.
It's what it's
So we
there
can
for,
take
right?
that interest, that amount of interest, and we can use it for,
If we had a
So-
project like a tree removal project,
Right.
could we use it for that?
yes.
So,
Because, well, for the French's Mills Cemetery where we have those trees and it's in the cemetery, and if they fell, that would, yes.
Oh, yeah, it would destroy
Yes,
yeah.
all kinds of
Yeah.
monuments, yeah.
Yeah,
so because I know if we do this, we're gonna get asked this question. How do we know that that money's part of the money that's in our investment? Because not all of our money's invested.
So, yeah, why isn't that part of the 3%?
cemetery,
No, yeah,
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah. No.
no, cemetery perpetual
never
care
part
was
of
never
that
part of
money.
it. It's in its own savings
That's
account,
right.
just like the ministerial is in its own savings
Yeah.
account.
Do we have the authority to invest it?
Yes,
Let's do that.
Very much so.
Yep.
Lois, sorry, do we know, so we have 72,000, so what do we draw, do we ever draw on that?
Not for
What is
decades.
perpetual care? I mean, it's to take
Well,
care.
what happened is somehow, it just shifted over to the budget. Of course, we're taking care of the cemeteries,
Oh, so
we're not
we
utilizing the
saved
asset.
it in the bus,
Yeah.
ha, 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 I see.
right, because of, I mean, at some point,
But that
the
interest isn't going back in the
cemetery
account either.
maintenance cost more than what the interest was being made, so they just,
So is that interest going back into the same account?
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I know how much is in there. And how much is interest and how much is principal.
Well, it's maybe fortuitous, because we may have a pretty good project here.
Now, does that have to go through legislative body
It's
to?
just
No.
a regular expenditure.
Already
I see.
did,
It's a
that's
right-
how it got set up.
That's right. And you are the trustees
Okay.
of all reserves and accounts and,
Okay.
We just have to make a motion that, you know,
We're going
if
in.
you did a project like that, then we would make no different than if you pulled money out of the equipment or
Okay,
right,
Great.
right, it's like a reserve.
yeah,
out of a
sort of.
reserve account.
but that's not part of the money that went over to the credit union?
No,
No.
nope,
Status of said red truck, did that get looked at?
yes, that's on my, item 10, we haven't got there. I got
So with that
4
said,
things on item 10.
so actually, we got a file from the day we started this and we show everything, every expenditure and every bit of interest and from day
Yes.
one.
Well, I'm not sure if it's from day one, but it's a binder.
Oh, geez, wow, okay.
It's enough.
It's enough.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's
good.
great.
Now we'll put it to work,
Yeah,
and, nothing, I'm glad we dug into that, that's
Right,
good.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it wasn't invested for the last
I
45
know.
years.
That's scary that we keep putting that same amount of money there, it's just not doing nothing. It's okay.
Okay, you had another item, Lois?
item 10, yes, so we're under item 10.
Mhm.
A, just preliminary audit, you've gotten the draft. I did, before I signed it, because there was an acceptance letter, I had to accept that this was the draft. And so I said, before I sign this acceptance letter, I want to see all of the reserve balances, because when the auditor was here, he wasn't understanding me, and he wasn't listening, and our voices raised a little bit. So, anyway, they sent me it, and I had to do, there were 3 or 4 adjustments. One of them was recreation, and you won't see them in this, that's why I wouldn't sign it, because it's not in this draft, the reserve balances. So, the rec had raised like $5,500 in donations, and then they spent some on the wheelchair ramp on the gazebo. But where I had paid it from, they assumed that we wanted it taken out of their rec reserve, which I said, no. Rec reserve is supposed to have 6345 period in it. And when they sent me this, it was like 50, whatever, 6345 minus the 2400 for that. And I said, no, they got donations for that. So I had to print out all the proof and the documentations. And so what they did was, and I told them that it was okay, the donations that wasn't spent, they put them into the rec reserve. And I felt that was an acceptable place to put them rather than just having another account hanging out there with
Yeah.
donations. Let's put it in the rec reserve.
It's
We
all
know
their
that we
funds
want the 6345 to stay there. And so they can still use that little bit of a cushion that they've got in there. So that was one of the bigger adjustments that they did. They hadn't read through our town meeting minutes where we washed the micro grant and the Abby Fowler grant. And so they had to wipe those. In 17, there was $1,000 for firehouse, and they had put it in fire equipment. And I said, get it in the right. And so all of those, and I mean, we went back and forth, and then this one, I finally sat and looked at this one, and the fire department was overdraft, and I said, you didn't read the minutes again, and it should have come out of contingency. So they fixed that. And so now it's good.
Wow.
And I think it's Schedule C. Is it Schedule C, the one that shows the bottom of your fund balance? It's still just over $1 million total, $1,043, I think. $1,043,000.
What are we looking for now?
I think it's Schedule C.
No.
It should be labeled fund balance.
Fund balances. But I don't see $1 million, unless this is.
It's the bottom. No, it's not that.
I think it's,
It's E.
yeah.
Schedule E?
Yeah, that's your bottom dollar right here, $1,032,000. So anyway, after I had printed these, they sent me the ones that don't say draft on it, but I've printed them into little booklet forms, so, because they're supposed to be available for the public, the preliminary audit. We don't have the full audit yet, but it's accepted and they'll get them to us.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do we ultimately, when you get the final, do we accept it or approve it? Is that how that?
No, I accepted it.
Okay.
We don't have to.
You don't have to, no. And you'll get a copy of the full audit, you know, the little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perpetual care, we've already talked about. The fire truck went out on a fire call, the rescue truck, yesterday to Dexter. And they backed it into the Dexter fire station and broke just the lights on the back. So
Glad
I,
nobody was
Class two
standing
driver?
there.
well, they had a direct person,
Direct
Was it
email?
a class 2 driver?
it was, I don't know.
Well, my question is
Oh,
driving a
Jerry.
fire truck to a standby call is not technically an emergency situation. So that doesn't apply to a normal driver driving the equipment.
My understanding, if they have the EVOC though, that's,
We need clarification, that's all.
yeah.
So I would think your insurance company's gonna,
Well, I'm hoping that we can just pay it out of their equipment and not really make a claim on the insurance.
Do you have an estimate yet?
Yeah, well, Jerry sent me a picture of, it's just the lights, it's about $1,000 for to replace those lights.
Any damage to the building?
Well, I asked him that and he said he didn't think so, but he wasn't there, he was here. And they didn't tell him if there was any damage and Trampus didn't call me, so I'm
so
assuming
that's 2
there's
standby
no.
calls in a year that we've accrued damage to trucks.
It's a possibility. Was the other one a standby? Was that a
I
standby?
believe so.
Or was he headed actually to the?
Pretty
What are the
sure
odds
it's
of that?
standby. What's that?
What are the odds of that?
Well, that one, that was a deer. I mean,
That's a little different.
you can't control wildlife.
It's 25.
And the last thing is, yes, I had the truck, Jeff Peters came down and assessed the truck, and it has like 6 or 8 transmission codes and an engine code. And
Really soon.
he told me, he said how, told me how much we may expect to get from it, but I have not taken pictures. I do have the ad ready to submit.
The
but-
question for Jeff was his assumption of what it would cost for the repair. That's what
Or,
he was.
or even
Oh,
a
I
diagnosis.
didn't ask him that. He wouldn't give me that. He just said,
Okay.
he says he wouldn't, no.
He wouldn't,
He wouldn't.
he wouldn't dive into
He
it.
wouldn't
Nope.
invest in it.
He said you're gonna need a
That's what-
transmission.
We did our due diligence.
Yeah. So, and he gave me, the list of all
Now,
the
did you wanna
codes
talk about busting that up?
The only thing I wanna bust up is I would clearly sell the sander separate from the.
I have 2 separate ads ready to go, one for the truck and one for the sander.
Yeah, I mean, the plow in the wing is the plow in the wing, I mean.
It has to go with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, I mean, you can take it off, but you're gonna pay somebody to take
Well,
it off.
Jeff-
Well, but the reserve with the hydraulics and all that was
Not on that
kind of
truck, it's
integrated?
all-
Oh, okay.
But I don't think you got enough value there to pay the cost of somebody to take it
Yeah,
off.
Jeff agreed, send the plow with the truck. He would, and he said the same thing, sell the sander separate.
The plow in that wing is not in that great a condition, I don't believe you're.
No, it's damaged. I went through our report that we had, the appraisal report, and it's even marked in that appraisal report.
the
that
sander
wing
out of
is
the truck?
damaged.
Yep.
Yep,
I would list them separately then, right?
yeah.
Yep. The only thing that I would suggest is that when we sell said sander, we're gonna have to have Seth, or I would even use one of our contractors to be there to get it out of the sling and onto somebody's trailer. I would not sell that and have somebody on their own up there loading that,
Yeah,
just because of liability, I would.
Well,
So
we
aren't you
can-
more liable if you load it?
if we can wait.
No, I would rather have somebody that we have that knows how to do that
Right,
than somebody that just gonna show up and.
Okay.
and
Right, draw.
Mess
Try
with
to
our
do
equipment.
it. Oh, I know how to do it.
Yeah, I know how to do that.
yeah,
Whoops.
You
Yeah.
know, and next thing you know, somebody gets hurt or.
Yeah.
pinned under it.
I just wouldn't wanna, I mean, it is in our sling, so I would somehow wanna figure out how to make that, so.
Good idea.
We don't have any liability
Yeah.
there, that's all.
Yeah. And he said he'd just make sure when I listed that there is a list of codes. Let it be known that there is a
Oh.
list of codes
That's fair.
for
Yep.
this
Yep.
transmission, and that
Yep,
they're available, just call.
full disclosure.
Yes.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, and I would, honestly, I would do the same thing as we did with the other one, I mean, you don't have to bring it here. I
As
pull it
is.
outside.
Where is
and
as is?
It has engine codes and transmission codes,
Send your own mechanic over if you want.
correct, I wouldn't allow people to drive it, I mean,
No, you can't.
it is what it is.
It's not going to go.
That's what
Started
I'm
it, nothing,
just,
just
They
sit
can-
there.
they can just come and look at it.
Will it start? Will it run?
Yeah, maybe. I know it had problems.
I would sell it the way it sits,
You know, I was just wondering if you can start it.
it does,
Last I
but,
know it ran. Warren had to start.
yep,
Well,
but.
doesn't he have to turn it on to get the codes?
No, you just gotta turn
No
it.
power.
It just needs electricity, yeah.
I mean, right now it's a one piece, if you start it up, the transmission grenade's sitting there idling,
Gets worse.
it gets a lot worse, so I would just not make it worse.
So you
what,
want me to
just
bring it
pull
down
out?
here?
No, I think you
Pull it
just pull it
out?
out.
Pull it out?
Okay,
Pull
okay.
it out, let it sit there, make sure,
Well-
I mean, I don't think there's anything in it,
I don't know. I
I
don't
mean, we can check, but
I don't think there's anything in it.
that's my opinion, that's what I would,
It might be a few more weeks before I can find the rest of the plow though, under the snowbanks.
Oh, no, it's
they're
open.
quick. They're showing-
they already,
Oh, are they showing up quick?
yeah, I saw them
Okay.
this morning.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the wing's showing up
Yep.
with the dustpan and.
Yep.
Oh, so that,
York
They
right
could
now.
easily get
so
out.
do they need to be installed on it,
No.
or just say, here you
No.
go, here's
No,
your
they are.
pile of stuff?
Can't
No, I
see
mean,
your
the-
cedar
The
if I
head gear and
feel,
everything
yeah.
is on the truck, it's
Okay.
just, the
That's
plow
gone.
blade and the wing is not physically on
Okay.
there.
Right, all the
So-
head equipment's on.
So
Okay,
actually, what I would do is if Chris Warren is up there and they got the loader out, they could easily pick that up and set the plow in the wing right in the back of the truck and you're all set.
that's smart.
And then it's up to somebody else it's all in There you
Yep.
go.
You're ahead of vehicle liquidation.
That's what I would do, but I wouldn't mess
Sounds like a
with.
good plan.
Nobody
Yeah.
needs to walk
That's
around, it's
smart,
all
yeah.
right there, and
That's very smart.
And you have all the authorizations you need, because we voted on this
Yes,
town meeting.
correct.
It's good to go.
Yep.
You voted on a town meeting and you made a motion on the last minutes.
Yep,
yep.
Go,
So it's
go
just-
ahead.
yep,
Making-
rock and roll.
The only thing that I would like to do, that we haven't been doing, and it's, actually it's going forward, but when we list the stuff on Craigslist, somehow I want the verbiage to know that it's gonna get sold at this meeting, and we're more than open to accept a bid at the meeting.
Correct.
Yeah,
I don't want it to say, you know,
Bids can be accepted at the meeting.
right.
yeah, that's
Whether it's,
all.
whether it's a paper
Okay, so
ad
just
or,
do-
Okay.
Sure, because if,
Not everybody does Craigslist.
well, not only that, some people wanna show up
Yeah.
and
Well-
discuss and bid. We
Not
sold
only
a
that-
lawnmower that way.
I don't wanna get into
Right,
a
that's
big
right.
auction situation, but
Right.
if, you
Or you
know.
won't.
But I
no,
mean, if your
here's
highest
the
bid
thing.
is, you get is $4,000 and there's somebody that's sitting here and says, I'll give
Oh.
you 5, I wanna be able to accept that $5,000 for the town.
Okay, so the bids will be open, and if somebody wants to
Correct.
up the bid, or
Really?
get the highest bid, yeah,
It's an
yeah.
auction.
Correct.
It is an auction.
We just did that with a lawnmower, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, it did.
Well, no, we didn't actually, because that one there, we accepted,
He from the
He
floor.
wrote it, well, no,
He
he had
just wrote it,
and
but he
submitted
didn't
it.
know
he
what-
didn't know what the bids
He-
were.
No, he didn't know
No.
what the lowest bid,
Yeah, you don't want to let people know what the bids are and then we'll all do more, do you? I mean,
right, no, maybe
That
they'll
has
all bid
happened
to
in the
be
past.
here, and then the people can bid from here.
Not lately with us, but in the past, that has happened.
I don't know why we couldn't do that.
What?
Us accept offers.
Right,
From the
but
floor.
not open the bids until,
No, we actually did it that way before.
open the bids.
Yep.
Yep.
Opened the bids, we had a number, somebody on the floor said, I will give you $1,000 more. And it was taken, not by this board,
But,
by a previous board.
oh,
I mean, you'd almost be obligated to. I mean, there's no fair play here. This is about getting as much as you can for the town's assets.
right, right.
That's really all
It
this
is.
is.
Right.
But my concern, and I don't have a problem with doing that, and I'm actually in favor of that, because I wanna get as much back for the town as we can. I just wanna make sure that when we run the ad,
Yeah, it's very clear.
that it's
Exactly
clear
right.
that that is what we're gonna do.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody
it's
to say,
fair.
I
It's
put in a
fair.
written bid and that guy didn't. Well,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that's not our,
yeah,
we will
that's,
accept.
so you don't see this way of doing things transponding over into accepting bids for other projects. You open up your bid and say, well, geez, I'll plow those roads for $124,000.
yeah, see, yeah,
That's not selling
It's
something.
not, you're not selling something.
Well, you're bidding.
Yeah, you are,
service.
but we actually don't take bids.
Yeah.
We look for price quotes, but we don't really bid, for example, plowing.
Well, right, but no, you said,
It's price
Yeah,
quotes.
we shop it and
Yeah,
decide
we
what is the
decide.
best fit for the
And we
town.
don't always take the highest, the lowest bidder. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah, that's a totally different process.
okay, let's,
Whereas this asset, it belongs completely to the town.
Right.
I'm very comfortable with just saying,
Okay, yep.
hey, if somebody wants to give me an extra $100, I feel obligated to take it.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone said, I'll mow that cemetery for 100 less, I might not feel
That's
obligated to take that.
okay, yeah, that's
So it's a different,
fair.
but at the same conversation, I wouldn't be opposed to somebody sitting here and putting a bid in person
nope.
Right,
and explaining what he was gonna do as far as that, whether it be more or less, and if we took it or we didn't, I don't know that, because
Okay.
it's not the same scenario. I mean, because we don't take that scenario.
We're
is
not,
about,
we're not obligated the way state and federal projects are. The municipalities are allowed to basically do what's completely in their best
The
interest.
best interest of the town.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
At the time.
It's not like you
Yeah.
know, a state project where the bidding is sacred.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah,
that.
good.
So.
That's it.
Okay. No more agenda items. We are going to go into executive session. Would one of you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under MRS 4056A.
Those in favor? It's unanimous. It is 7:20. And we are in executive session.